What's happening? Welcome to the 37th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. I'm Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat. And first, I would like to give a huge shout out to all the Patreons. That's super important. Um, the latest one, Andy Barilla and Joe Fick. Thank you, Joe. Jake Taylor, Dan Rondeau, Jose Arana, Etienne, Rouzet, Mikey, Paul Moomaw, Evill, Richard Tralles, Scott, Owen, Bob Cullen, Kurt Ribak. If you like what I'm doing, if you like the Slapstream, make sure to check out the Patreon. The link is in the description of this video. And if you feel like donating, check out PayPal and Venmo, also in the description of the video. Today, I always feature slap bass players. This is all about slap, Slapstream, Slapsville, what's happening, and all of that. And today is a little bit of different kind of slapping, and it's a little bit of different kind of bass. I'm not sure if it's a bass or not. You're gonna tell me that. And welcome to all these people. I see that quite a few of you are here. Write a comment on the side so I know that you can hear me fine. So, or if you want me to adjust something, let me know. I can adjust my volume, and my guest today can adjust his volume. So let us know. So, as I said, today is a different kind of bass. It's a magic bass or magic pipe, whatever you want to call it, and very, very unique player. It's not rockabilly slapping, it's not psychobilly slapping, but it is slapping, and it is bass in a way. So, I'm very excited about this episode. And without further ado, I would like to introduce that one guy. Welcome.
Thank you, my friend.
How's it going?
It's good. It's good.
How have you been holding up during these crazy times?
Oh man, probably like everyone else. Just waiting for them to tell me when I can go outside again. No, I'm good. It's been fun working on stuff. I've been working on my music for sure, which has been nice, and taking a little break from the road, like we were talking about earlier, which is always good to just take a breather. But definitely got cabin fever, as they say.
Yeah. I like your T-shirt. I played that place. That's a Buffalo.
Oh, the Buffalo. Right? Yeah, I love
the
Mohawk and Buffalo. It's yeah, I miss going there. All your fun little towns that you get to hit on the road. I just always thinking about them. Although right now I'm guessing it's pretty cold. It's colder than where we are in Buffalo.
Oh yeah, definitely. Can you Vegas, imagine? Right?
Yeah, Las Vegas. Okay. So similar weather to you guys.
I remember noticing your name all over the place when I was touring with my old band Fish Tank Ensemble, and we even played some festivals together. But I never had a chance to see you actually play live, and it was always a different day or like a different week. But I'm glad we can do at least this,
Oh, this is great. Yeah, it's fun to get to connect virtually if we don't get to be at a festy.
This is our music career now.
I know, it really is. Feels like it.
Yeah, it's good that we have to be creative and put out some kind of music out there, but it is a little crazy.
Yeah, luckily for me, I started doing my little stream show about 3 years ago, just as a way to promote my gigs. Oh. And so at least I was kind of up and running with this thing. And it was always just once a week, just for an hour. But now it's my whole career. So yeah.
Which days are you doing and which platforms?
I do Monday, Thursday, Saturday, 5 p.m. Pacific. And it's on all my platforms, which is YouTube, Facebook, what's the other one? YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Periscope. I multi-streamed to all of them, and it's mostly that one guy with the number one, but it's Radio One Guy on Twitch. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All your socials are in the description of the video, so all of you viewers, make sure to go and follow that one guy. And
thank you.
It's also under his photo here. I mean. So you can check it out. And I forgot to say like huge thanks to Nicky Lugosi from Argentina for doing these graphics at the very last moment. So I forgot, to tell him the content. It's like, oh yeah, I can do it. So thank you, Nicky. All right. So I'm curious. I mean, you play very interesting instrument. But I'm curious first to hear about your beginnings. You know, how did you start? You know, what was the first instrument that you played? When was that? And all of that fun stuff.
Well, actually, it all starts with the upright bass, just like you. And I started studying jazz, classical, playing rock and roll and punk when I was a kid, and I got into jazz bass specifically, real seriously, really early. I was super lucky. We had an incredible jazz music program down in Southern California, actually, in LA, where you are, out in the suburbs in Westlake Village. But we had this amazing music program in this incredible jazz band, and kind of inspired me to get into big band and sort of big band swing and all that. And then, of course, when I got a little older, I went deeper into sort of bebop, and I was a full-time bass player, you know, way before I did this. And actually, my solo act started very much on the double bass and gosh, like sort of slap percussive style, you know, double bass, sort of playing the body like a drum and stuff, similar to this. And this was very much inspired by the double bass, by that technique. And so yeah, the first, you know, I think in terms of slapping, because, you know, I do actually have a lot of stuff to say about slapping, because it's such a huge part of my life and a huge part of what we love to do as bass players, you know. And initially it was this kind of slapping on electric bass, but then when I heard Milt Hinton, that was early on, and some of the rockabilly guys, I got really into it, and I didn't know that you could slap on the upright bass until I saw those guys do it. And of course, it's a little different because with your electric bass, it's more of a thumb bass thing, you know. And of course, with the upright, it's more of the pull. And so it took me a while to kind of fuse those styles together. That was sort of my specialty with my band. I had a band called the Fabulous Hedgehogs. This is in the Bay Area. I moved to the Bay Area when I was 15 with my folks. My dad got transferred up there. Our whole family moved up there, which was actually a great move. There's an amazing music scene up there. And I started my band, the Fabulous Hedgehogs, which was this weird mix of upright jazz, rockabilly, funk, Parliament, Bootsy Collins, funkadelic, everything. And so actually my rig was sort of the precursor to this, because it was an upright bass, but I had magnetic pickups that were feeding through effects into a big kind of amp. And then I also had my Underwood bridge pickup, which went into my wood natural sounding rig setup. And that's kind of the first time I started thinking about parallel processing, you know, sort of running half your signal here, half your signal there, and trying to create a bigger sort of one-man ensemble is what you end up trying to do. And I studied classical music. I went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and so I'm a bowed classical guy. And then what else? There's so much because I ended up playing. I played professionally in the jazz scene in the Bay Area for 10 years, full time. I was doing 400 gigs a year, like no exaggeration. And then I had to make once I've built this, and I decided I really wanted to focus all my energy on my career. I switched it all over to this, and actually haven't touched my bass in a while. But touching this bass. So
So the first instrument was actually an upright bass or electric bass, right?
My dad is an upright bass player, and so I was so lucky. I grew up with a 1940s K bass in the house, and he always had it there. He paid his way through USC Business School, playing 7 nights a week at Charlie Brown's in LA.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was an amazing story. He actually played Jim Keltner, the famous session drummer, was in his band when they were probably late college age. And he would always, that was some of the first kind of music business lessons my dad would tell me about Jim Keltner, because he'd say, and when I was young, I didn't know who that was yet. I didn't realize he'd played on all the most important records ever recorded. But he was telling me, even at that young of an age, Jim was he had a kit in his car for his other gigs. He had a kit that he kept at Charlie Brown's for their 7-night-a-week gig, and then he kept a gig at the studio that he was already recording at all the time. And he was explaining to me that studio musicians actually are the ones that are working the most. And so I was so lucky to grow up with an upright bass in the house. That's something that almost nobody gets, because it's like, maybe you get to borrow one from the school or the orchestra or something like that. But yeah, that was I ended up, when I went to the conservatory, I used the K bass and
oh really?
And, and then I ended up buying a really nice instrument. I bought a Czechoslovakian flat back, and I didn't finish. I got about 3 years through conservatory, and then I had to.
What was the last piece? What was the last concerto you played?
I was working on the Bach cello suites, because they make everybody. Yeah. They make every instrument learn that thing. Just because it's
they're amazing.
Oh yeah, then they're so beautiful. I could play them pretty well on the electric, on the upright bass. It's so hard, I was shocked the first time I actually saw a cello player play them, because when you're playing that first one, it's do 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 do, and then you watch a cello player and it looks like they're playing Kumbaya. It's Bach wrote that thing to be playable. He wrote it to sound good. He did not write that for us to play it, but I played the whole first suite and the second suite pretty much. I got through like 3 juries, they call them, at music school, which is you play for the faculty and they decide if you're good enough to move on to the next semester. Oh. And so I practiced the heck out of those. I was working on the Kusevitsky concerto, and I was working on.
Okay, so Kusevitsky was the one.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, there's only like 5 of them, right? Concertos for upright bass.
Kusevitsky, Dittersdorf, Dragonetti,
Eccles.
Before of that,
Eccles Sonata.
But I'm talking about concertos.
Oh, concertos, yeah.
And Bottesini, of course, Bottesini.
Yeah, right.
I think it's B minor and F sharp minor.
So you went to you did conservatory.
Oh yeah. I did a classical in conservatory in Belgrade, and I did also jazz over there as well.
German bow or French bow?
German.
Yeah. Good man.
Yeah, I can play French bow as well, but I prefer German.
Yeah, my first teacher, luckily, we had a German bow, that came with my K. And my first teacher was this great German bow player. And then when I got to San Francisco, I couldn't find a teacher. And then there was this one guy. He was the only part of the San Francisco Symphony bass section that played German bow. Everybody else played French, and he was amazing. He taught me. It was actually funny. I was probably 23 when I started studying with him, and I was really excited to learn. And I was working on this. What's that? What's that? Can't remember now, but I was working on that as fast as I could, and I was going to play it for him to impress him. And I started playing it, and he goes, stop. Let me show you how to hold the bow. You're not holding the bow all wrong.
Oh, yeah,
he goes, you're never going to get it. And this is after I went to music school and everything. And he was showing me this whole thing of this incredible sort of pinky position and this sort of way to cradle it, where you're really kind of using the weight of your arm and everything to get the sound. I was doing this whole kind of like, just grabbing it, and he was just amazing. And we went back to page 1 of the Samandel book and did C major scales for a year, because I didn't have anything together. And then also with my left hand, it was a real revelation, because he was showing me how, what you want to do is play with the weight of your your body. You never want to do that. You want to do this, pull in and free up your thumb. And, that really opened up everything for thumb position and just, navigating the upper register, lower register. And, it was real ergonomic the way he showed me how to play. And it's something that carried over into everything I do in life, like even just opening doors and things. Cause when you tense up, that's when you run into all kinds of issues. But I noticed that if you just relax and use the weight of your own body to pull down these giant strings. I mean, these things are huge. So, you don't want to do this. You want to do this.
It's interesting that you're with such a crazy instrument and unique instrument. You're using classical technique.
And I mean, that's where it all comes from. And actually, speaking of pieces, one of the pieces that inspired me to even build this was, what's the concerto for one string? The Rossini, Paganini. The Paganini. Do you know the Paganini piece? Or
I never played it.
Yeah, it's I was watching. There was another bass player at the school who was playing it. He was ripping it, and it got me thinking. So much of the solo repertoire for upright bass is for pretty much the G string. You don't play across as much. It's mostly a vertical thing because these your half steps are so far apart, especially down here. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to work so hard to learn music and play it all, all the melodic stuff on one string. That was kind of the inspiration for this. Cause I thought, well, okay, I still want to be a bass player. So I'm going to have my big E string here. And then melodically, this is actually a G, but it's a shorter scale length. And so it's kind of like playing the Paganini piece on this one, but because it's a shorter scale length, I can hit some bigger stretches, intervals. You can kind of leap around a little more. And then up here, in the higher register, it's easier to play in tune. Well, it's nice because I don't have a body of an instrument to get in the way when I'm playing in the upper register, so I can really kind of navigate up here and everything. So yeah, it's completely inspired by the classical bass. Actually, I actually hadn't thought about it in a while until you just said that. But that was initially the inspiration for this half of the instrument. Okay. And then I have these triggers buttons all over the thing, and those are inspired by the body of the instrument. Okay. Because I was doing lots of this stuff and on the bass, and so I wanted to place, because there's no body, and the initial design in my head was to build a body, but I don't know anything about woodworking or any of that stuff. And I remember when I started experimenting with triggers, I thought, well, you know what, worst case scenario, I can just duct tape them on there. And that's what I did for the first version, which isn't this, but it was like this. I have these triggers here, and this was going to replicate kind of this part of the front of the bass. This was going to be this side and like the shoulder, like maybe the right shoulder. And then, I was doing a lot of snare drum stuff on the upright bass on the left shoulder, when you go good. Yeah. So that was going to be this, but it was also going to be, there's these ones. Oh, you can't see those. Can you?
I'm sure that, lots of my viewers never heard you play. So do you mind playing something so you can first demonstrate, and we're going to get into all these details?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll play a little something. Just real quick too, my feet are playing, whoops. My feet are playing percussion. I got these, that you can't see, but, so I got the triggers here, and then I do a lot of sort of live looping with the, like that. Sorry. Okay. So that's the kind of the gist.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
I mean, I watched lots of your videos, and this guy's actually making music. It's just not. It's one string, but there's all these other sounds, and then you write songs, and and they're groovy and they're awesome. You see,
Thanks, man. Yeah, the one string thing too is kind of a funny bass inspired traditional idea, like the gut bucket. Do you play gut bucket at all?
I played it in the past.
Yeah. Me and my dad tried to build one early on. It didn't work because I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it, and then I realized it actually you want a softer string. You want the bucket's got to be more of a resonating sort of surface. I've seen some amazing dudes do that thing. I've kind of figured it out now, but yeah, the one string gut bucket bass, or then there's that guy. You've probably run across the dude from Split Lip Rayfield who plays the gas can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he'd be a good guy for the show, probably. Well, yeah, because he slaps the hell out of that thing, and that kind of one string, kind of folkloric, or like the diddley bow, like the old blues diddley bow instrument with the bottle slide on the side of the house. So there's this weird, rich tradition of the one string thing, which is also a bit of an inspiration.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it looks great, and it sounds great, but it's not a shtick. It's just like you actually play great songs and great music, and then you're able to play a whole show just by yourself, and people dance and enjoy and talk about it for years after that.
Oh, thanks, man.
And it's great. I really love what you're doing, and obviously, my viewers as well. So
good.
Cool. Watch hands, more hands. Wow, love it.
Good.
Chuck Garner wrote, "This is the craziest thing that I ever seen." That's amazing. And Jose Arana wrote, "This looks like a Star Wars instrument."
Yeah, I got to meet the triggers. The first time I saw anybody use them like this was Bella Fleck and the Flecktones when that first when that first album came out with Sinister Minister on it. And that was, believe it or not, they were playing that video on MTV and VH1. I was I think I was a senior in high school, but Future Man, he had that drumitar thing, which is, it's like a Synthax. It's an old 80s Synthax guitar that he's playing triggering drums on, but then he literally was sticking drum triggers right onto the body of the surface. So it was that kind of idea of hitting triggers. That's what initially gave me the idea to try to glue triggers onto my upright bass, which I was doing. And just the Star Wars thing reminded me, because I played at a festival with that he was at. I can't remember who. He was playing with Bella Fleck. That's right. So I was at the Winnipeg Folk Festival, and they all watched me. They all watched me from the side of the stage, and I was real super nervous. And afterwards, he came up to me and said, "Hey man, can I get your phone number? I want to start like a Star Wars band, a Star Wars Cantina band kind of thing." Wow. I was like, "Oh, please call me," but it never worked. Oh, we haven't done it yet. Maybe someday. So if you're out there, Future Man, give me a ring. I still want to do it. Yeah. He was so nice. He was so nice, and I told him how inspirational he was to me early on, seeing this, and he still is. He invented another instrument. It was a little while ago now. It was about 10 years ago or more, but it's a microtonal. No, it's a piano that's tuned to the periodic table of the elements. There's a weird scale apparently that somebody figured out. Frequencies related to the period, and he built this piano thing that plays in that, and I think he has an orchestra that plays also to that scale. That's amazing. Yeah,
that's really cool. I mean, it's one thing that you build a unique instrument, but it's another thing that you actually play great music on it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it was definitely that's what it was for initially. It was meant to do things that I couldn't do on my bass. That was. Mm-hmm. Especially being a one-man band, I wanted to fill out the sound more and just figure out how to take this technique and push it.
And do you ever miss playing upright bass? Like, are there stuff that you would like to play on the magic pipe, but that you're not able to?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that sounds like a bass. There's no. I'm still just such a sucker for a beautiful sounding instrument and listening to a great player. I miss playing jazz, actually. I mean, I played, like I was playing, 10 nights a week in San Francisco. There was a really beautiful scene there in the Bay in like the 90s where we were all working full time.
Yoshis, where were you playing?
There was a whole scene in San Francisco. There was like the Elbow Room and the Up and Down Club and Club 11. The Jupiter in Berkeley was this place that we played almost every single night. And actually, they used to let me play solo bass there. I used to play a 2-hour solo bass gig there where I would do this. That was such a lucky break because I didn't really push. I wasn't pushing my act as a solo bass thing, but the booker at the Jupiter was a really good friend of ours. And at one point he asked me, he's like, do you ever play solo gigs? Cause me and Clyde the Slide, who's the trumpet player, we had this sort of new jazz, funky jazz group called Dog Slide. And we also had like 10 different little groups that were all the same dudes. It was a little bit of a racket, but we had a thing called Slide and Mike, which was just trumpet and bass. And we would do like, cocktail hour gigs and stuff. And the booker at the Jupiter said, hey, do you ever just play by yourself? Cause he was seeing me do all this percussion stuff. And so I'd play this 2-hour gig solo, no material. I would just improvise. And I had a couple looping boxes and things. And I was really getting into this big, expansive kind of improv, kind of freak out thing on the upright, but I was trying to keep it ambient and sort of, what do you call it? Just kind of, I didn't want to piss anybody off. I wanted it to be background music for the gig. And so I was doing that a couple nights a week and playing with like a really great drummer. I kind of miss that. I loved playing jazz and just other styles with just a really great drummer with a nice feel and just interacting with other musicians. I do miss that. I didn't do this because I didn't want to play with people. That wasn't the inspiration, but I did want to tour. I did want to hit the road, and it was really hard to do that with my band. And my main thing back in those days was the Fabulous Hedgehogs, but we were a 5-piece, sometimes an 8-piece thing. Everybody was full time. Nobody could hit the road. Nobody wanted to get in a van and tour for 3 months for not a lot of money. And so that was another reason I wanted to try this. I wanted to see if I could tour by myself. It just seemed like a fun idea to be a one-man troubadour,
Absolutely. I mean, for me, there's nothing like, playing a pocket when you have a good drummer and then you lock in and it's
the best. It's the best.
But like touring by yourself, I'm sure it has its own great things, that you can do whatever you want. I do lots of cool things on a tour, but when you're completely by yourself, it must be.
It's so liberating. I mean, our band would get these out of town gigs. We'd go from the Bay Area and we'd go like LA, Arizona, or we'd go up to the Northwest and do Portland, Seattle and everything. And we do like a 4-day tour, and it felt like 3 months with those guys, because we didn't know how to do it. We were sleeping on floors and not sleeping at all. And I'd come home and sleep for 3 weeks because it was so brutal. But with this thing, it's surprising how civil my touring life is. And mostly because I've been doing it for so long, but I think I'm a kind of a better human on the road than I even am at home, because on the road I really have this methodical life where I have to get up kind of early and drive, get to the gig on time, set everything up. I do this whole show. I do this whole kind of interactive multimedia show that I do with this thing.
How long does it take you to set up?
These days it takes me a really long time because I have these video screens and I'm manipulating the visuals and everything with the instrument. All this digital stuff is controlling the video, and that takes forever. And there's magic and kind of illusion stuff that I do in the show. And and I'm solo. I actually have been touring with a friend of mine who also kind of is a bit of a tech, who's helped me with some of the technical stuff too. So sometimes he helps me too. But for 10 years I did it by myself. And I can if I do festivals, I don't bring all that extra stuff, and I can actually set this thing up in 5 minutes if push comes to shove, because you know how those festivals are. It's they put the acts back to back, and they want you line check and hit it and quit it. You know, they want you off and on the stage. So I miss those. I think the festival thing is, God, I miss that almost more than anything. That's just getting to hang around with other musicians and see some good music and just be out in the sun. It's just a fun time.
One of those festivals that I remember seeing your name that I played was a Hiawatha festival.
Hiawatha?
Yeah, I think it was in Michigan, somewhere up there.
It could have been, God, Michigan. I used to play the Bliss Fest a lot up in Harbor Springs. I used to play.
Maybe it's a Bliss Fest.
It could be Bliss. Bliss was amazing. I did that like a bunch of years in a row. That's way up north. Yeah,
that's
way up north.
It has a camp in the woods right next to it, right? Is that a one?
Yeah, that's one of them. That's Bliss Fest for sure. Okay. I'm just trying to think if it's Michigan. There was the Ypsilanti Jamboree. There's Electric Forest. That's the big one in Michigan, Electric Forest.
I'm pretty sure it's Bliss Fest.
I bet you it was Bliss. Yeah. What year were you there? Do you think it was 2000? I played there in like 2016, 15. I played there in 2010, 2009, 2008.
It was before that. It was maybe 2000. Let me see. Maybe 10. Maybe.
Yeah. The 2010 was the second year I played it. 2009 was the first year I played it. I was supposed to play it 2008, but that summer my van got stolen with all my gear in it when I was in Montreal, and I had to had to take the whole summer to rebuild everything. I had to cancel all my gigs, and I was supposed to play Bliss Fest that year, 2008, and 2009 was I had a whole new setup for that one. That was a rough year. Yeah.
I bet. Can't imagine.
Yeah. It was. Go ahead. Sorry.
You mentioned a couple of things at the very beginning that I wanted to ask you. You remember you told me that you heard some rockabilly players and you heard like a Milt Hinton, and that inspired you how to play slap on the upright.
Yep.
Did I get it correct? Do you remember what have you heard from Milt Hinton?
Oh man. Well, the very first album was this weird old record with Art Hodes and Milt Hinton. It's a duo record. So he's doing a lot of that stuff. And then he was featured. This all happened really quick because this is probably 2000. This is probably 91, 92. He was featured in Bass Player I had that album, and then he was featured in Bass Player magazine, and I read up on him. And then there was a touring tribute to Benny Goodman that he was part of, with all the old guys. And he was, at that point, I think he was 83. Does that sound right? Yeah. And I went every single night. I went to see him. And this is at Kimball's, Kimball's East. Yeah, Kimball's East. And is that still there? Kimball's East?
I'm not sure.
There was two jazz clubs. There was Kimball's West, Kimball's East, in San Francisco, and in Emeryville. And I went every night to see Milt Hinton. And it was so amazing because, it was sort of the old combo style. I mean, I guess you'd call it bebop. And everyone's soloing over the form on every tune. And he would only take a solo maybe every like 3 tunes. And it would always be the showstopper. He would just do his whole thing. He would do his whole slap thing, his whole thing. And then I remember I at the end of the night, because it didn't seem like it's kind of a big stage. It's kind of a beautiful club. And at the end of the night, I was just sitting at my table, and he was breaking down his gear by himself. There wasn't roadies or techies or anything. And he had a little wheel, that little wheel you can put in your end pin. And
Oh yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like he's got his little jacket on and his bass, and he's rolling his bass, and he's got his little amp, and he's traveling alone. And I like kind of chased him into the hallway, and I was like, Milt, hey, I just wanted to tell you I've been listening to you, and it's so incredible to watch you do this. I didn't know how you did any of that stuff until I got to see this, and it's just so incredible. And he was so humble and unbelievable, and he goes, oh man, I'm just glad I'm on my way out and not on my way in. I can't keep up with you young cats. And I was like, you can keep up with me. I'm not that good, but he's so good. And God, how old did he get? When did he pass away? I can't even remember.
I think 90, if I'm not.
Yeah, I think it was.
If I'm correct.
Because I feel like in my mind, it's funny to think he was 80. I think he was like 83. Or he was up there, you know. But the thing that really blew me away was the ease in which he played, because he didn't look like he was doing anything. And I was hearing all these all this syncopation and the double hits and the single hits and the whole thing. And in my mind, when I listen to the record, I'm just picturing this maniac. And then when you watch him, everything is just so easy. And yeah, and then he did that Branford Marsalis record too, the Trio Jeepy.
Yeah.
That I liked a lot. And then they toured. No, did he tour? Yeah. And then I saw him at the old Yoshis, the original Yoshis with Branford in Oakland. Not in Oakland,
when you
Berkeley.
Say original Yoshis, you mean the I know that there were two, right? There was one in San Francisco on what was the
Fillmore?
Street? Yeah, and on Fillmore? Okay, on Fillmore. And then there was Yoshis in Oakland, right?
The original Yoshi, well, the one in Oakland wasn't even the original. The original one was in Berkeley.
Okay, so I'm aware of that one.
It was a tiny little sushi restaurant. And and I saw him there. I saw everybody there. I saw Chick Corea acoustic band there with John Patitucci. Yeah, and that was the first time I saw an upright bass played like that. You know, like I didn't know. You know, when I'd go see jazz, I was going to see a lot of jazz when I was a teenager. And there was, you know, just sort of soloing over changes is such a I was struggling with that early on. I got really good at it later, but I didn't understand. I just didn't understand the language. And then watching John Patitucci play, I mean, he was great on the 6-string electric, but watching him play the upright, and he had that fluidity that he does on the electric, but on the upright. And I just couldn't believe how melodic and fast and aggressive and the whole band, it kind of felt punk rock to me. I loved it. It didn't feel jazzy. It was like so aggressive and intense. And Chick Corea, you know, just so much fire and just the way they all played together. And that was another one where they would play Wednesday through Sunday, and I went every single night to see them at the old Yoshis. And it was so tiny. I mean, the stage was maybe 8 inches off the ground, and you could sit right there. I mean, you were 5 feet away from them. And
that's amazing. I'm jealous. And I've been to the Yoshis in Oakland, and it's
beautiful,
sushi, but it was fancy sushi restaurant.
Yeah, they upgraded it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember after moving from Europe, I was like, you know, all these guys are playing at the. I remember it was Dave Holland's band, and I was like, oh, they're playing at the restaurant. What's going on?
Yeah,
so it was weird for me coming from Europe and then seeing that, but I like the place. And then I cannot imagine like seeing Milt Hinton live for every week, like I mean every day of the week. That
it was amazing. Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I saw him a few times.
And you seen him in the 90s? That's what you said?
Yeah, this was early 90s. So
okay.
Yeah, this was like 91, 92, 93, I think.
Oh, okay. I saw him. He had to be around 80 something.
I feel like he was 83. I feel like 83 sticks in my mind because, I mean, I was 19 or something or 20. So I think
he
I was
born
83.
in 1910, and he died in 2000.
1910. Wow, was he? So he was 90?
No. He was 90 when he died.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, no, in the 90s. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So 93, he'd be 83. That makes sense. Okay. I remember 83 stuck in my head. And actually, you know who else I got really into, which is also slap bass legend, is because I got really into Latin jazz, Cuban music, and that Cachao. Yeah, that Cachao movie had just come out, that Andy Garcia made, and I talk about luck, because I literally that year, I think on the success of the movie, he brought Cachao to America to play, and he played at Yoshis. Can you believe that? He played at that little tiny Yoshis. I saw him there again. I think we went every single night. And then he also did a big show at the Fillmore, which was great. It was like a super high energy Cuban thing, but he's the inventor of the mambo, the rhythm. That's him. And he was the first guy I saw do this shoulder thing on the and he was another one where you watch him and it's all just very, very easy. It's like when you get to be that age, you start to realize, wow, I shouldn't work. I should figure out how to make this work without killing myself,
Yeah.
Because, with my old band, the Fabulous Hedgehogs, I was slapping with all my strength and energy and banging my head and, just killing myself every night. It was just so dumb, And then you watch these guys make all this beautiful sound with real minimal effort, but it's not even minimal effort. It's refined technique,
There's something you get to be that old and you play that good and you're that cool.
Yeah, well, that's it too. You're you're looking up at these guys going, oh my God, I wish I was even half as cool as these dudes. And, and I remember there was a drummer I got to play. There's a kind of a legendary jazz drummer in San Francisco named Vince Ladiano. And he used to play at Pearls. There's a tiny little jazz club. I don't think it's there anymore. I haven't been back in a while, but it was on Columbus Street. It was called Jazz at Pearls. And all the local kind of older legend dudes would play there. And every Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I think, it was Bruce Foreman and Vince Ladiano. And there's a couple different bass players that would play with those dudes. But I would go and watch. And then later, when I was playing a ton of jazz gigs, I got to play a gig with Vince. And I remember he showed up 5 minutes before the gig with this little kit set up, bam, sounds amazing. I used to carry around this huge amp, and I had my bass, and it took me a while to set it all up. And he was so cool and so nice and just chill. And then the second the gig was over, bam, the kit, he was just gone with the wind. And I remember thinking, this guy has it dialed. It's like, don't waste any energy, carrying around gear. Just keep it light, keep it simple. All that stuff adds up. If you're playing 2-3 gigs a day like he does, it's if you're going to do it for your whole life, you gotta streamline. And I'm a terrible example of this because everything I bring with me weighs 1 trillion pounds and takes forever to set up. So I'm not practicing what I preach here, but man,
I'm curious to hear how you travel and when you tour in Europe. But before that, I would like to hear you play more.
Okay,
do you have something for us?
Yeah. Let's do. This is a fun one. Here, I just thought I can jam on this one a little bit. Let's speed up this tempo a little. I do. Just also with the live looping thing. A big part of what I do is I'll play parts. Actually, this part in the studio when I recorded this song, I played a bunch of cello parts. I play a little bit of bowed cello too, and I made kind of a cello orchestra with 20 different cello parts. And then I sampled them so I can trigger with my feet the cellos that I play. And then a lot of times I'll do a similar thing with percussion loops. Like in this one also, I made a loop with what am I saying? Oh, with just garbage cans and stuff and shakers and stuff. So if you hear other sounds and you don't see my hands making them, that's something that I made before that I'm triggering in. So let's see. There we go.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
It's so cool. I want to see that, in the club or something.
Yeah, man. I'll make my way down there. I play down there. A couple different places, but yeah. What part of town are you in?
Well, I just moved, but I was basically in North Rondeau.
Oh, cool.
So South Bay.
Yep. Right on. Yeah.
Slapsville.
What's that?
Slapsville.
Oh, Slapsville. Amen. Right answer.
We got like a bunch of comments. Mind blown.
Oh,
From Carolyn.
thank you.
So cool. From Tara. And Tonino Adelini wrote, amazing. It was 2010 when I saw one video for the first time. I was so impressed, but unfortunately I forgot your name. I'm so happy to find you back again 11 years later.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was one of my first videos I made on my iMovie program there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Are you making your own videos as well, or?
I am now. There's a couple videos on YouTube that I did when I first moved to Vegas. There's this one I did for my Mustaches song.
Oh, I saw that one. That's great.
I was
wondering about that.
I was really proud of that one. That was really hard to do, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not, as dumb as it is, this friend of mine is a phenomenal cinematographer. He's got one of those red cams, and he flew out here to do it with me. And we went out into the desert. It was in the middle of summer. It was 114 degrees in this dry lake bed. And we did the whole thing in one take, and it took 6 hours because the whole thing is I keep changing mustaches. I keep walking about half a mile back into the horizon and changing my mustache and coming back, doing one line of the song, going all the way back and changing my mustache. And that was the concept, was he was going to speed it up and then slow it down when I do my lines. And so it took 6 hours and in the sun, and I lost 9 pounds of water weight, sweat, and I was just by the end of the day, I think I was hallucinating from the dehydration, and but it looked so cool. It came out really good, it came out really good, and I was wondering, you need to be really creative to have a cool video. You don't have to have a expensive crew and all of that, and you just have to have an idea in your head and then go for it. That's what's fun. Yeah, that's what's fun about this time, especially because the tools are so accessible, especially good cameras and things. You can kind of do it with almost anything, your iPhone and stuff. And editing I've been really having fun with editing. I've been doing a lot of that stuff and I'm trying to make more. I'm a little behind. I got a whole album's worth of new stuff that I wanted to film. Mm-hmm. Little videos for myself, and I've been getting into doing some motion graphics, animation stuff too. And I want to do more of that stuff. The video stuff is a blast. I just love it. And I like doing the visual manipulation thing too. I mean, I do that on my broadcast every 2 days when I do that in here, and it's a chance for me to at least practice that stuff when I'm not getting to do gigs.
Yeah, we gotta do what we gotta do. So let me just remind all our audience that you have a podcast that you're doing Thursday, Saturday, and
Monday.
Okay.
Yep,
5 o'clock Pacific. And it's I guess it's the easiest that they can go to your YouTube.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's probably. You can actually watch it at my website, but it's better to watch it at the YouTube channel on That One Guy, or my Facebook too. That One Guy. Yeah. What's that?
So there it is.
Yep.
YouTube, That One Guy. Go there, subscribe, watch every Saturday. You have a show today as well, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing this at 5 p.m. tonight.
How long is your show?
I do about an hour. Sometimes I go longer. When I first started doing it, I was always going really, really long. But I've been trying to keep it an hour just because almost like a gig. I like having a form and sort of knowing, what you have coming up. It gives you a little bit of a chance to think more structurally, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go here, then I'm going to go here. And I always want to feel like I'm leaving them wanting more, just instead of exhausting them. I got on my tours about 3 tours ago. I had this new album out and I was trying to play everything from it, plus all this other stuff. And I was playing these 2.5-hour shows and having such a blast, but realizing that, you gotta think about your audience sometimes and not completely wear them out,
Well, I know my concept is completely different for Slapstream. I try to, since I have a different guest each day, and most of the bass players don't get a chance to get featured at all anyway. So
that's so true.
Yeah, so I'm trying to tell the full story, to present the whole career from each guest that I have, and then I'm this is actually nice format when I don't have to stop.
No, you shouldn't. You should never. I think for this kind of format, when it's a conversation, I think never ever cut it short if it's interesting. I was just listening. There's a engineer guy I like to listen to who talks about production and stuff, and they do these 3.5-hour conversations, and it doesn't even feel like it at all. You just listen because the information is so valuable, and you're saying, you're not getting it anywhere else. Like, these guys got nowhere else to tell their story either, except to each other and to us, the fans, and yeah, bass players. I mean, I remember Bass Player magazine, like when it came out, that was our only resource, and I was starving for information, I had a subscription to Guitar Player magazine before there was Bass Player, and there'd be like an ad, there'd be like one bass ad, maybe, Jeff Berlin had a column at the end of and there was like a couple things, but, having a whole magazine for just bass, that was a big deal. And I love listening to, could you imagine like Milt Hinton doing a 3-hour podcast? Like, that would have been so amazing. Like, we never got to hear him interviewed, really.
Well, there's actually like a few of those that I would recommend that I found. One
beautiful.
that I think is the best is in the museum. It's not public and it's not live, but you can go to, when you're in New York, you can go upstate. There's a African Culture Museum, I believe. It's American, African, or Black American. There's something African in it. I forgot what is the exact name, but museum. And then they have a Milt Hinton interview where he has a full like a slap bass lesson, and then he talks about, and I believe it's 3 hours long.
Wow!
And I went there a few times and then watched the whole thing. So
damn, I gotta go. I gotta go see that. I gotta see that.
It's pretty cool. And I like the one that it's a part of the Chester Zardis movie, New Orleans movie that was previously released on VHS. I think it's called New Orleans Jazzman or something similar. But it's a Chester Zardis movie, and then there's a Milt Hinton's in it. Cool.
Milt Hinton. Another thing that I'm remembering now. He was one of the first people to walk a bass line. Like he was practically the inventor of the walking bass line. That's what, like, it was funny to think, because Chow, I mean, he was about that age too. They were pretty similar. And, to go to see the guy that invented the mambo rhythm, and then to see the guy that invented the walking bass line, I mean, it's a crazy thing to think, because jazz is at this point, it's been around for a while. It's been around for over a century, because if he was, well, no, he didn't invent it when he was born. He didn't invent it in 1910, but however old he was, I mean, he's probably a teenager, or like in the 20s with the first walking bass line, I guess.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either.
I never thought about it. I don't know. I never thought. And then, what is the walking bass? I mean, for us, we're like more jazz oriented. It's, when you use more scales and like, passing notes, chromatic. But for bluegrass people, or like, more rootsy people, when you say walking bass, it's usually arpeggios.
That's true. That's true.
So it's a little tricky thing.
But I think I remember in the bass player article that I first read of him, it had just kind of evolved from playing it was still quarter notes. It was still jazz, four on the floor, I guess you could say, with the bass, but it wasn't moving. It was root, and I think he was, but I guess like the bluegrass traditions was around then. So
I mean, also like New Orleans jazz guys like Bill Johnson, they had like some walking stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's tricky to say, but Milt Hinton is, I mean, at least for slappers, it's
oh my god,
one of the main guys. And since we're talking about it, actually, I would like to. This is the question that I usually ask my jazz guests.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like a jazz guest. So
totally.
What do you think? Why slap kind of pretty much disappeared in jazz music after, I always say, the year 1939 when Jimmy Blanton joined Duke Ellington Orchestra. Yep. And then after that point, if you read jazz history books, they always talk like, oh, that's where jazz bass starts, like forgetting about all these cool guys before that, like Pops Foster, Bill Johnson, Steve Brown, all of them. And then and that's the kind of the point that they choose like as a starting point for jazz bass. and that's exactly the point where kind of slap disappeared in jazz.
What year is this?
I think it was 1939 when Jimmy Blanton joined Duke Ellington.
Oh yeah. You know what's funny about it? I think I almost feel like it's the same reason why some people don't like. I could be way off with this. Some people don't like slap bass on the electric, which is it really fills up a lot of space, a lot of rhythmic space. And I think, well, especially in the Duke Ellington Orchestra, it's like, there's a lot of sound, and recording was starting to get better. And if you have a drummer and you have a lot of stuff going on, there's almost not a ton of room for it, I feel like. It's just sort of a feeling I'm getting, because I remember the first time I even really heard it. And I remember thinking, wow, it sounds noisy to me, and it didn't make as much sense unless I was hearing it solo or unaccompanied or in sort of a stripped down context. Although, the Stray Cats, the first time they were on MTV when I was a kid, and that was like a big deal, like seeing an upright bass on MTV, and it wasn't a prop, it wasn't a gimmick. And you're hearing it. I feel like, but that's a stripped down, that's a stripped down thing. Why did it disappear? In the early 90s, like literally, it was the Rockabilly guys and Milton Hinton. That was the only people I was hearing in Ka-Chow doing that. But yeah, in the 50s, 60s, you don't hear it. In bebop, you don't hear it at all.
Oh, in jazz completely. I mean, Milt Hinton was pretty much the only one that was keeping the tradition. And there were a few guys here and there. Slam Stewart would do it in that, in that period a little bit. And then I don't know, there was a guy, Roland Gary from New Orleans, that was doing it in the 2000 already. But at that point it kind of came back, and all jazz guys kind of started to appreciating New Orleans jazz as well. So that's when they said, all right, so it is jazz. So that slap was kind of cool in a bit, but it seems that bebop people and everybody who's into that, from 50s jazz until 90s jazz kind of hate slap.
Yeah. Oh, big time. I think, even when I'm just thinking back now that I hadn't thought about this at all until you said this, but because even when I went and saw that Benny Goodman thing with Milton Hinton, I mean, he only slapped during the solos, there's no room for it when there's, there's a 5-piece and vibraphones and there's a lot of sound, and when they'd feature him, everybody would drop out, and then that gave him all this room to do his thing. And I think there's a big part of, I think, I don't know if there's room. I don't know if there's rhythmic room for.
I can hear that for in a big band situation, but in the when they stopped doing big bands, mostly in the the 50s or so, they mostly played a combos, and then there's lots of room over there to play it.
No, there is. Yeah. I think also, the upright bass is such a funny instrument. I remember there was an Italian, I wish I could remember his name. This is an amazing Italian bassist that came to the conservatory that was doing a workshop for us. I to this day can't remember his name. He's amazing. And he was taught, he was the first classical, strictly classical, just did Bach cello suites. And
was it Petracchi maybe?
I don't know. This would have been this early 90s. So
I remember that he was doing some classical workshops that, classical guy that he was doing back then. He had some good recordings, but it doesn't matter. Go on.
It's so funny because his name didn't stick with me, and I'm actually pretty good with names normally, but with that stuff anyway. But he said something that stuck with me, and he goes, the upright bass is an instrument of compromise. He goes, it's really hard to play. It's hard to do. Because he was specializing in the Bach cello suites, and that that piece is not meant to be played on the upright bass. You really have to almost have superhuman abilities to play it. Like when you hear Edgar Meyer, a guy like that, when you hear a guy like that play, it just transcends the instrument. He's doing things that you're just not supposed to be able to do on this instrument, and that goes for the bowing. But then on the other side of the spectrum, when you're talking about amplifying the instrument, it's really hard, like I remember when I started my band, I mean, we were like a rock band. We were kind of rockabilly, but we were sort of like Frank Zappa, Parliament Funkadelic, and we're loud. Our drummer bashed and we were all really loud. And I had to figure out how to get the upright bass to compete. And it was so hard to do because, the feedback, I was battling that thing where you're shoving bed sheets inside of your instrument and stuff to kill the vibration. So it's not feeding back. And then all kinds of crazy EQ and dialing out low frequencies and constantly battling it. And then with the magnetic pickup, that solves some of that problem, but I still wanted to hear the wood and the sound of the instrument, but I wanted it to be super loud. And it was like, it's so hard. It's such a hard, weird, difficult instrument. And I remember even slapping like at a jazz gig, like I always felt I didn't feel comfortable doing it. Like if I was playing with like the older dudes that were like these heavyweight kind of bebop guys, I wouldn't start slapping away because I always thought maybe I'm going to freak them out. Like they wouldn't be into it or something like, and it's so funny. I have not even ever thought about this until you're saying this, but I think subconsciously I was always trying to do the right thing for the gig, depending on who was calling me. But, when it was time for maybe me to play a solo, sometimes I would do that kind of thing and, then they would drop out and I could just kind of play by myself and try to do that sort of one-man rhythm section thing. So I think, it's a tricky one because even like in modern jazz, you don't see it. But then, there's Avishai Cohen and there were guys that came along that are doing it kind of at a whole nother level.
I featured, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Adam Ben Ezra. I featured him a couple weeks ago and he demonstrated his.
Oh man, I got to watch that. That episode. How did I miss that? Yeah.
He's excellent. And when we're talking about modern jazz, there's a bit with slappers, and I definitely would like to feature James Singleton as well from Astral Project from New Orleans. They had kind of Steve Mazakovsky was the drummer for that band, and is still, so they're still playing. He's actually excellent, very unique player. And which brings me to something else that I wanted to ask you earlier when you were talking about your solo bass start in San Francisco and clubs around Bay Area. Have you ever run into a bass player called James Wheaton or Whiton or something like that? But Whiton.
When would he have been there?
Early 2000s.
Yeah, that was right when I was gone. I was like so deeply ingrained in the world there right up until 99. And then I actually left. I left the Bay to do this because I'd finished this instrument, but it was my own music was always my last priority. I was always playing with everybody else and the phone was ringing all the time for you're a bass player. You're getting the gigs. And I literally had to leave my whole bass career alone and go. I went down to LA because my brother was living down there, and I stayed with him and just to work on this thing and not do any shows, not do any gigs. And I missed him. It's like 99, 2000 I left, and then I kind of was disconnected. And I did, when I went back, the whole scene had changed. Like almost like a bunch of people had moved to New York City, a bunch of people I knew. A lot of people moved down to LA. It's funny how the scene just shifts constantly. It's always moving. And half of the clubs were gone, and then there was a bunch of new ones who were doing different music. Your whole world just kind of shifts, which is just the way it goes.
I used to live in San Francisco for 7 years, but I moved out in 2010.
Okay.
So to LA. But it's interesting because James is doing lots of slapping, but not traditional rockabilly slapping. And then he's doing lots of solo shows, and he
Okay.
has his electric bass, electric upright bass, and using lots of loopers and stuff.
Beautiful.
Amazing player, very talented.
I know the name. I used to know everybody's names, but
He's one of those guys that I never hear his name, but he's one of the ones that I believe it has to be known. It's really excellent.
Wow.
I would love to feature him, but he's a first line worker, and then after this whole mess is done, then I should be able to.
Oh, he's like he does like medical stuff or something, or
I think so. Yeah. I think
wow.
he switched
Good on
careers and moved somewhere. I believe New Mexico or somewhere. And
oh,
so,
wow.
So
okay.
It's a different thing. I lost touch with him, and then when I started doing the series, I was like, yeah, I wanna, because first I was like, am I gonna end up just with rockabilly, psychobilly people? I'm like, I don't want this. I want to show how wide you can use this technique in every genre, and that it's just a technique that I'm always tried to kind of establish it, that that everybody should know at least a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's such an exciting way to play. I mean, it's like it's such a, I mean, slapping on the electric too. It's like I got really into that like really really early, and I was so lucky with this in this junior high school, this jazz ensemble, because my teacher, he saw me doing this and he really wanted to encourage me, and at the same time, it's like it doesn't sound good in the big band, like when there's all this other stuff going on. So he would give me a solo for the year-end concert, and the whole band would drop out, and he'd let me, do this whole kind of funky thing by myself, and that was definitely something that got me thinking, that it can hold people's attention, by itself. The whole idea of being a one-man rhythm section, I always thought was cool. And when I had my Bay Area jazz career, and I had the duo with Clyde, the trumpet player, I mean, it was bass and trumpet, which is pretty bare bones, and we would play 3 sets. We'd play these cocktail gigs and stuff and happy hour sets. And it was so hard. It was just so hard because I was, we're playing tunes, we were playing, standards, and he wants to hear, he's a trumpet player. He wants to hear changes. He wants to hear where the harmony's going, where everything's moving. And I'm like, he was always saying to me, he's like, man, can you spell out the chords a little bit more? And so I'm trying so hard to spell out all the harmony, but also doing this whole syncopated, slapping thing. Cause it was just us. And it was kind of fun. It was really allowed me, like doing a long gig like that, like all the time, really allowed me to develop a whole language as sort of a one-man rhythm section. But, I gotta say, I did feel like sometimes it didn't always work with everybody, and I'm sure that there's just some drummers especially, I think they don't always want to hear that. I think they want to play, a lot of drummers want to feel bass, and that is an interesting, weird dynamic. I feel like I always felt not self-conscious, but I was always trying to be aware of my space in an ensemble, like where do I fit in? Maybe this isn't the time to do this because he wants to swing here and clack clack clack. It's going to conflict. It's like, if I'm going to go clack, 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 he's going to change it up and approach it a little bit differently. And then rockabilly is a different thing, because it's sitting in the groove and it's establishing, like the slap is probably going to establish the syncopation and the swing and define where everything is. But watching Milton Hinton I'm trying to remember who the drummer was on that Benny Goodman one. It was, but later I saw him with, I think it was when I saw him with Branford, it was Jeff Tane Watts, Milton Hinton. And when it came time just to play, he was just playing. He was just walking because Jeff Watts is swinging. And then when it came time for the solo, they couldn't wait to drop out and just let Milt just go. It was so cool because like back then, those guys, I don't think had heard that stuff a lot, even because, you were saying.
Well, I'm not sure about it because Brantford was, Brantford's dad is Alice Marsalis, who was always very involved with the old New Orleans scene.
True.
And he did play with. He was not the one that was just playing modern jazz. I mean, modern, saying post 40s.
Sure.
Jazz, but he was playing old stuff too. So I'm sure that in New Orleans, the tradition never stopped. So
that's true. That's true. That's a beautiful thing about that town. Like I go there a lot, and I'm sure you do too. And a couple of bass players I got to know down there, and they just play. Those guys work just day and night. They do like 10 gigs I thought I was busy in the Bay Area when I was Mr. Bass Player for Hire guy, but those dudes do 10 gigs a week more. Like he was. There's two dudes that I was hanging out with down there that were telling me, because I was thinking, oh, maybe I could live here and just work here, because the scene was so neat, and I love the brass band. Old New Orleans music it's so alive there. It's so beautiful, so happening, and the modern stuff too. But I love that it's rooted in this really old, the beginnings, really the absolute beginnings of jazz. And the Bay Area scene, when I was there, it was very much so funny. I was just telling the story to these friends of mine that I run into at the coffee shop sometimes. I was trying to explain. They were asking me what acid jazz was, because the Bay Area had this weird thing that they were calling acid jazz, which is like mid 90s or early 90s, like funky jazz, which is sort of like I guess post Herbie Hancock, Headhunters kind of vibes, but it's also just a very aesthetic based, musical genre where the drums are kind of recorded a certain way. And we were trying this other group, Dog Slide, that I was in. We were trying to do that because it was really popular, and there was a lot of there was people getting record deals and stuff playing that music. And I remember we would play kind of like jazz, we'd play busy and do stuff, and the trumpet player that led the band says, people aren't going to like this because we're playing too much. It's more of a groove based thing. It's more funk based than jazz, but it's got a real jazz kind of swingy thing. And I was just thinking about this yesterday, just that movement, because it was very much a Bay Area centric thing. I mean, there was 2 or 3 labels like Fog City Records and a couple labels that were putting out that music from the Bay, but it was a neat thing because it felt new. It felt like a new sort of form. It felt like a new take on jazz. And there was work. I mean, people were like playing clubs every night, original music, and people were going. That was the craziest part, where people were going to the clubs to see the music. And it was like a trendy, cool thing to do. And when I was taking bass lessons in the late 80s, when I was a kid, all my teachers were telling me, oh man, there's not going to be a career in music soon. Computers are taking over, and in the 70s, you could make records, and you could do studio work, and you can do show gigs and all this stuff, and all that stuff is gone. And they were kind of right. But when the 90s came, it was the opposite of what they all told me. I mean, I had more work than I was even guessing was possible. It was a crazy cool time. I felt so lucky because I wasn't looking for it. I just happened to be kind of in the middle of it. And of course, when you play bass, I mean, my dad, so lucky for me. My dad, one of the big lessons he taught me early on, he said, because I didn't want to play bass right away. I kind of wanted to play guitar. I kind of wanted to play drums. And my dad's like, you'll always work. If you play bass, you'll always work. He's like, nobody wants to do it. Everybody needs a bass player. And his story is crazy because he was playing violin in the high school orchestra, and he literally went over to the upright bass like during the lunch hour and he would play the bass. He would just dork around on it. He didn't even know what he was doing. And he said a couple of dudes came up to him and said, hey, we didn't know you played, but we need a bass player tonight, for our gig. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I play. I think he just took the bass from school and just showed up, and he never learned to read music. He hardly knew even where some of the changes were. He has this amazing ear. He's just got an amazing ear, and he could follow these guys. And that was his career for years. He was just kind of like fudging through the changes. And like, you wouldn't believe the people he played with, back then. And he was just really good at it. And he was telling me, he's like, you'll be shocked at the opportunities you'll get as a bass player versus any other instrument you pick. And it was true. It was when I was in like 7th grade, I was already in all these bands, and I kind of knew where the notes were, but all these bands didn't even get to play with a bass player yet. So they were excited to hear low frequencies and would just freak out when like I'd play a low E string along with them. They'd be like, whoa, it sounds like a real band now, and I wasn't even thinking I was doing anything. And that's always been the thing. And, even, I hate to say it, but even getting into the conservatory of music, if I was a cello player or a violin player, I wouldn't have gotten in. I mean, I was decent. I was good.
I feel too.
You know what I mean? Like, I think they needed bass players, and I had learned a couple of the excerpts and things, and I went in there and auditioned, and the audition went okay. And they're like, we need this guy. I think we got 3 bass players in the orchestra right now. We need, and it just offers you opportunities that you wouldn't have gotten,
Yeah.
For me anyway, that's.
You mentioned the 90s scene and acid jazz scene in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Were you ever involved with neo swing stuff that was happening around the same time and also in San Francisco?
Yeah, that was a huge thing, and that came up just as I gotta say at the same time. And initially, I remember thinking I thought initially I thought it was super cool because I feel like it started in LA. I feel like that thing, because I saw the Royal Crown Review. Oh, yeah. That was the first group I saw do it. And they came up to the Bay Area with the Cadillac Tramps. And I went to Slim's and I saw them, and I was shocked because the place was packed. All the girls were wearing poodle skirts, and the dudes were all dressed up and looking amazing. And these guys were wearing suits on stage, zoot suits, and they were good and they could play. And I was shocked. I had no idea anybody was doing that, because all the stuff we were doing was like, that I was involved with was bebop and like real serious kind of music school stuff, Yeah. And these guys were like living this era thing. And I thought it was so cool. I thought it was just the coolest thing. And then like, I think that year it just started taking off in the Bay. And I would get called now and then for those gigs. It was almost like, there was a couple dudes that would call me. Let me think. What was there was this guy who had this thing called Atomic Cocktail that would call me. Oh, yeah. And I was probably like the 5th call guy, because he had dudes that looked better in a suit than I did probably. And but it was fun. It was fun to play that stuff. And then there's a couple other swingy things that were pretty big. That scene was huge in San Francisco, but it's so funny to think back on it, because I wasn't doing it that much. I mean, I was a little more dedicated to sort of the acid jazz side of things. And in a weird way, those worlds didn't mix as much as you'd think they would. Not. Those were 2 different things. And, I gotta say, it wasn't that it was like a too cool for school thing back then. When I was that age, I didn't think I even thought about what was cool and what I just sort of did. I was just happy to get to play every night, because I had gigs almost every night. But yeah, there was a couple. I'm trying to think who are the other big. There's a couple big ones. Well, then there was like LaVey Smith and the Red Hot Skill, but she was old school. I mean, she had been doing that gig before that movement, so she was like the real deal. She's kind of really authentically doing something that was rooted in that old music.
Lee Presson and the Nails, I think.
Lee Presson and the Nails, yeah. I know. I'm trying to think of who else. There's like 5 or 4 big ones. Lee Presson and the Nails.
I remember there was Jazz Cats.
Jazz Cats, yep. Yeah, I know those guys. I knew those guys actually. That was what was his name? I was spacing. They were in Oakland. Some of those guys were Oakland.
Jazz Cats?
Yeah, I think so.
Pam was the singer, I think. What was her? She had a stage name, but I forgot.
Yeah.
But anyway,
wasn't
I know those folks too.
Yeah. No, that's a fun time. That whole thing. Trying to like it's funny because there were these clubs, that were doing the acid jazz thing, like the Up and Down Club, the Elbow Room. They're very specific just to that. And like Alphabet Soup would play every Monday at Up and Down Club, and those were like really amazing musicians. Jay Lane and Charlie Hunter, the guitar player. He would do Tuesdays with his original trio. And all that. And then there was like the clubs that did more of the swingy thing, and they only kind of did that. Like, trying to think.
Club Deluxe?
Deluxe, yes, Deluxe. Yeah, because that's where the Royal Crown Review would come up. Apparently, they would come up more than I realized. And there's this amazing drummer, this guy, Dave Ravelli, that was telling me he used to play with those guys. Like, they would call him because they'd come up, but they wouldn't bring the whole band. They would fill it out with local dudes. Yeah. He was this phenomenal drummer that I used to play with up there. But yeah, Deluxe. Yep. Forgot about that.
And what happened with San Francisco?
I don't know, man. I mean, it was crazy. 11th Street, where Slim's. I mean, literally one block. You had Slim's, you had the DNA, you had the Paradise. You had next door to the Paradise, which was the Transmission Theater. You had Club 11, which was this jazz club. We played there like 2 nights a week. And then you had the 20 Tank Brewery next to that. And that was the same booker that booked the Jupiter. So we played every single one of these clubs like every single night. And then if you went down Folsom Street, that's where you had like the Up and Down Club. And then of course in the Mission was the Elbow Room and stuff like that. And then Haight Street, that's where Deluxe was, right?
Yeah.
I think, you had like on that part of Haight, you had the Boomerang, the Night Break, the I-Beam, Deluxe. There was like 3 others too, small ones. Oh, the Full Moon Saloon. I used to go see Primus there. They used to play this little, we used to go see Primus and whoever would be opening for them, which would always become our new favorite band. And they used to play at the Full Moon Saloon. There'd be like 100 people there, and there was a hole in the wall where you could get pizza from next door. There's the pizza place, Escape from New York Pizza. And yeah, the Haight was super cool, like super weird, kind of transitioning, because it definitely wasn't the 60s anymore on Haight Street, but it had this grimy, cool, artsy music scene. And I don't know if any of those clubs are there. I'm guessing none of them are. I can't imagine they would be. Like just literally on one block on the Haight was all those clubs, and then on one block south of Market was all those other ones. And when I came back from LA from doing this thing, the first round, a lot of that stuff was gone, and a lot of the musicians were gone too. But I just figured that that's just the way it always goes.
It changed so much. I used to live on Page and Ashbury, just like one street.
Oh man, right there.
Yeah, right there.
Dang, yeah, Haight was cool. I was living when I went to the conservatory, which was in the Sunset, the old building. I lived over there in the Sunset, and I'd come over there I'd come over to Haight all the time.
You used to live in Sunset area?
I used to live over by SF State. So it was technically,
I know that.
It was called Ingleside, I think. So
okay, I know that area. I used to live in Sunset most of my time in San Francisco, but it was on Irving and 17th.
Okay, yeah, that's right near to the conservatory, kind of, because
it's conservatory 1 block from the park.
Yeah. The conservatory was like Judah and
something
20th, because all the streets were alphabetical, Irving, Judah, and then the streets were numerical all the way down to the beach. And then I lived on Orizaba by SF State, and it was like actually a really kind of dangerous neighborhood, but the street I lived on was like this steep. It was just like almost vertical to get up, and nobody would walk up that street. We would lived at the top of this weird little hill, and we wouldn't even walk up there. It was so steep. It was impossible. And so it was kind of its own little, it's almost like living in a tree fort or something.
Can't imagine San Francisco. I mean, San Francisco changed so much, and people that used to live there in the 50s and 60s, they have like completely different stories. And
oh my God,
of course. And
I know.
I mean, even 90s, when I moved there, like they told me, everything changed. It's not the same.
That city is crazy, though. I mean, it's like every time I go back there, I always love it. I love the feel of the bay. I love the feel of the ocean, and just there's so much beautiful stuff there. But I almost never recognize anything. But then when I go to the East Bay, it's like nothing's changed. Like when you go to Berkeley and stuff, because when we were kids, when we were going to high school, we'd go to Berkeley a lot to like go to the record store and hang out and go get pizza and stuff on Telegraph Avenue. And that was like the cool thing to do. And it felt like the 60s, like in the 80s, it felt like the 60s or what I imagined the 60s felt like, because you'd see the movies and stuff, but you'd be on Telegraph and it just felt like the old days, and whatever that even meant to you as a kid, you know. But when I go back there now, it still feels that way. Like Berkeley still feels like Berkeley, but San Francisco is always like, this whole block wasn't here. I don't recognize any of this. Like the whole skyline's like changing. There's always just so much money there. It's just everything's always being built and torn down, and everything's new. Everything's a startup and brand new, and still pretty though. Yeah.
IT town.
Oh my God. Yep.
Like all my artist friends kind of moved out.
Yeah.
Let's get back to bass in your career. What would you say was the highlight of your career, your solo career?
My solo career, man. So hard to say, because I had an idea in my mind of what success really kind of was early, or like to me, what success was being able to like not have to get a regular job. That's all it ever was. And I, like I was telling you earlier, my teachers would always say, oh man, you know, making a career in music is really hard. It's really hard. They'd always say it's really hard, but they would never tell you why it was really hard. I never understood that part of it. And I was shocked at how easy it felt to do this. Not that it wasn't work, because I felt like I was working 24 hours a day. It was just like you're constantly going to gigs, you're constantly planning things. It's this full-time thing that's completely consuming, but that never felt hard to me. That just felt fun. And so they didn't tell me that part, that it would be fun. So I'll never forget. I had my band. And so when you play your jazz gigs, you know, it could pay $50, it could pay $100. It sort of depends on what you're doing. When I'm playing in my original music, my original band, the Fabulous Hedgehogs, they pay you $50 for the whole band to split, which is, you know, not enough. And I remember thinking when I was starting to do this, what if I could play by myself and make $50, you know, and then maybe I could tour, maybe I can make $50 every night and sell a couple CDs, and then I can make a living just doing this, you know. And that was the first time I ever felt like I was really successful, because I hit the road. I booked a 3-day tour, and I could only get 3 gigs. And I remember the first night I played in this weird little club in Ketchum, Idaho, in the mountains. And the guy booked me, and there was 12 people there. And, you know, they cooked me dinner. They cooked me this amazing dinner. They were going to let me stay at the club. They were going to let me sleep at the club. He was going to pay me $50. And then there was probably 12 people at the bar. That was the only people that were there, and they all bought a CD. And I remember thinking, this is great. This is totally great. I could totally live off of this and be totally happy, you know? And it felt so much more freeing than anything I'd ever done as a musician up until that point. Because the other thing that always bothered me about being a bass player was I always felt at the mercy of somebody else's idea or dream or career, for lack of a better description. And like, I had actually started getting on auditions for bigger gigs. And I got to do this one audition for Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, who I was like a huge fan of. And I don't even know how I got the audition, but I went down there and I actually got like pretty close to getting the gig. And then at the last second, it just didn't work out because they changed drummers and the drummer brought his bass player. It was just one of those things that happens to everybody. And I went from, oh, you got the gig, to, oh, you don't got the gig. And I remember just going, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to like almost get the gig and then not have a career, you know? I just want to just have control of my own destiny and make $50 and sell my CDs and maybe sleep at the club and get a free meal. And that was like this really cool, liberating thing, because I remember my business plan in my head was, I'm just going to assume nobody's going to give me a big break. I'm just going to do this other thing and just grind. And then if I do get a break now and then hey, I'm lucky. And, you know, I got a couple breaks. Like that first year, I got a couple, Ani DeFranco, of all people, wanted me to open for her because some really good friends of mine were on her label, this band Drums and Tuba, and we were touring together, and they kind of introduced me to them, to her world. And I got to open for her in these big amp, you know, I went from playing the little club for 12 people to opening up for her in these little amphitheaters. And that was the first time I felt like I was actually doing something. I remember standing off the side of the stage before I was going to go on and seeing my rinky-dink instrument with all the duct tape and all the stuff, and on this big stage surrounded by all this equipment and all these people that came in, and just panicking, thinking, I don't know, I think maybe, I think I'm supposed to be doing this initially. And then I got up there and I played, and it went really well. And I thought, wow, okay, maybe I am supposed to be doing this. And yeah, I think getting an opportunity that you didn't even ask for, I mean, that's a pretty magical thing. But that's what music does for us, you know. It's those are my favorite parts, are when things are just kind of presented to you that you didn't even know were there, you know, in the first place.
That's amazing. And you also play musical saw, right? I do. And you played it on the Tom Waits album?
Well, that's a funny thing. I was supposed to.
Okay.
This is a really funny story. I'm a huge Tom Waits fan. That was another one. So Milt Hinton, all those shows, all that early jazz stuff we were talking about. Around the same period, I bought Small Change, that Tom Waits record, and totally changed everything for me, because I was just starting my band. I was just starting songwriting. And actually, it kind of ruined me for a couple of years, because, you know, I started singing like that. And I started, you know, like I just wanted to be him so bad. And I wanted to play with him. I remember thinking the whole time, this would be my dream to get to work with Tom Waits, you know. And it's so funny because this incredible engineer that I had done a ton of recording with in the 90s, Carl Derfler, who went on to just do incredible engineering and producing for some amazing records, some of the best records ever made, this guy's done. And we reconnected. He became Tom Waits's main guy. And he called me out of the blue and he says, hey, do you still play the saw? Because I started playing them. I don't even know where it is. I could show you, but I don't know what I did with it. It's got to be around here someplace. But I had a Spanish teacher in high school that played the musical saw, and it just blew my mind. If you know, the first time you see somebody play the musical saw like in front of you in person, it seems like it's supernatural powers or something. And I asked him about it, and he kind of explained it to me. And I went and bought it. So I've been playing musical saw the whole time, and I would play it on the records with my band and stuff, and sometimes at the gigs. So Carl calls me and goes, hey, we're working on this project with Tom Waits, and he needs a saw player. And do you still do that? I'm like, yeah, I do. And I just was so freaked out that I was going to get the opportunity to like even meet him. And he goes, okay, I just wanted to make sure, you were in town. He's going to call you, but we weren't even going to bother if you weren't around. And the funny thing was, I wasn't around. I was somewhere else, but I came back and just waited for him to call me. And then he calls, and I missed the call because it's a block number. I didn't know it was just like a week later. And I get this message, and he's like, hey, this is Tom. Hey, give me a call. I hear you play the saw and all this stuff. So I call him back, and he's so nice, just so friendly. And we have this great talk. We have this great conversation about music, and he's explaining to me. And then he goes, so Carl tells me you play this crazy instrument too, And I'm like, yeah. And I'm explaining to him about the magic pipe, which is this thing. And he goes, well, maybe, maybe bring it, maybe we could see. I was like, oh, please. And so I start and then this is the most important part of the story. He goes, do you play any other instruments? And I go, well, actually, I'm a bass player. I've been playing upright bass my whole life, but I just haven't touched it, and it's been about 7 years. I've been mostly just doing my magic pipe gig. And he goes, oh, I love upright bass. You know, I use it on most of my records. I'm like, I know, I have all your records. I know, I'm a huge fan of all your bass players, you know, Larry Taylor and Greg Cohen and all these guys that play on those records. It's so good. And Les Claypool played on the later ones and stuff. And just like all my favorite music was on those Tom Waits records. And anyway, so he goes, all right, well, so we made the date for the session. It was going to be in a month. And I actually started practicing the saw like every day. I was just practicing. I wasn't sure what he was going to ask me to do, because I thought, you know, there's a couple records. There's this record called The Black Rider that has a lot of saw on it. And it's mostly just sounds. It's like kind of spooky, weird ambient stuff. And I'm like, I can do that. I can do that all day. But I was thinking, what if he wants me to play a melody, like something hard? So I was practicing, and the only way I could think to practice was learning standards. So I was learning all these standards, just trying really hard. I bought a new saw that had more range. It was this whole deal. And so the date's creeping up. I'm getting nervous, this whole thing. The day before the session, he leaves me another message, and he goes, hey, Mike, it's Tom. Listen, I changed my mind. Just bring your bass. Just bring your upright bass. And I'm thinking, oh God, because I hadn't played like at all, you know, and all my calluses are gone. I think my ear still works, you know, I can play in tune, but like, it's like, I was just panicking, and I got my bass was in my storage locker. I went and got it out. It was all dusty. It was all out of tune. I'm like, should I stay up all night and practice? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to rip my fingers up. I might as well do that when the tape's rolling, you know, with the gig. So I get there super early. Nobody's there yet except for Carl. And I says, so should I set up? I just wanted to be ready for whatever was going to happen. And he goes, nah, man, just chill out. He goes, you never know. You never know with this guy. You know, sometimes he tells me he wants to do vocals, and then he'll show up with 20 people to bang on trash cans or whatever. So I says, okay, I guess let's see what happens. And he showed up, and we played a couple of tunes. We played this blues thing, and it was in a weird key, like it wasn't in any key. And I just sort of like tuned my bass to the thing, and I just tried to play along. And then we played this ballad, and the ballad was really fun. You can actually hear me pretty good on the ballad. We tracked that with a whole group, a whole ensemble. And then half of the people I actually knew. I knew Carla Kielstead real well, who's this amazing violin viola player, and Joe Gore. I know who that is. Yeah. Do you know Carla? Yeah, she's just phenomenal. So good. And she is really good friends with this whole crew of Oakland people that I was really tight with. The Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum folks that used to be Idiot Flesh, and they ran the studio called Polymorph, where I'd done a ton of recording. And I sort of went way back with like that camp. But then Joe Gore, you know, was this legendary Bay Area guitar player that I'd been aware of since I was a teenager, but I had never met him. And he was there. And then Tom Waits' son, who at the time I think was a kid still, he was like 19, and he was playing drums. And it was fun. And we played the tune. I tried to, you know, he was teaching it to me. He was sitting right there teaching me the song, and I'm trying to like follow along, just like tripping out because I'm such a fan. But it went well, and we got through it. And then this is the funny part, like the session's coming to a close, and he goes, and I had my saw there. I brought it just in case. And he goes, oh, hey, sorry we didn't get to the saw, you know? I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And I was just sort of like, just relieved we'd gotten through the session. And he goes, yeah, I wanted to do Young at Heart, you know, Frank Sinatra. And I hired this other guy, and he couldn't even do it. You know, I'm going, Young at Heart. And I'm like hearing the melody in my head, and that melody is insane. You know, it's like, you know, it's all these changes and keys, and you know, I'm thinking, there's no way I could have played that on the saw. There's no way. And I was so thankful that we never got to that, because I just would have, you know, I don't think he had any idea how impossible that is. So I can't imagine anybody playing that on the saw. And so when the record came out, The
Just to
song
let
was
you know,
on.
like actually a friend of mine, Dan Cantrell, was the guy that he hired like for the saw for that
No
record.
way.
Yeah. Do you know
Wow.
Dan? Dan is
I
the
don't
guy.
know. I don't know him. He didn't say his name, so I didn't know who it was.
He's from the same scene with Carla and all those Bay Area musicians.
Oh,
But anyways, he
wow.
played, I have to ask him about that story because
Yeah, I asked him because he was sort of like, yeah, I tried a couple guys and they couldn't do it. And I'm like, nobody can do that, dude. Like nobody, And I didn't say that to him. I was just like, just thank God, that he didn't ask me to do that. And then like later I tried to do it. I'm like, this. I would have been sweating. I would have been, Carl would have never called me again. Nobody would have ever called me again. And it was funny too, because in the parking lot on the way out, Joe Gore, I went up to him and just told him that it was great. I was like, man, it's really great to meet you. I've actually been a fan of yours for a long time. And he goes, oh yeah. No, I'm surprised we haven't crossed paths. The Bay Area, is a small place. And I go, yeah, well, I guess it went well. I mean, was this good? Because he didn't necessarily say, good job, or you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know if I'd done good or not. And he goes, oh, this was a really good session. He goes, 90% of the time he just sends everybody home like halfway through because it isn't working out. Like that's most of the time. And this time we made it all the way through the song and he seemed okay with it. So this was as good as it could possibly go, And I was thrilled. I was just totally thrilled. But that's so funny. Yeah, that's so funny that must be him. That must be him. I thought I remember him saying it was somebody from a jug band though. He's like, I have a friend of mine up because he lives up in northern California, like up in the woods there.
Sebastopol, I think.
Yeah, up by Sebastopol or Katati up there.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, there's a friend of mine from up there that plays in a jug band or something. I'm like, man, there's no saw player alive that can do it. I mean, there probably is, but I don't know. I don't know them,
musical saw is such a great instrument, but it's so hard instrument. I had a musical saw in my old band Fish Tank Ensemble, and I love the sound, but it's really hard.
It's really hard. I actually came up with a pretty cool thing. For me, the hardest part was always you have to put it between your knees and bend it, and it's really hard on your back. And the fact that your knees are moving and you're flexing the saw, it's too many points of change. And so I came up with this invention it's like a weight belt. It goes around on my body and it's got these pipes that stick straight out. And I can stand up and play the saw. Like I can walk around and play the saw and it stays way more in tune. You have to bend it more here, but it's way better because everything is way more like it's easier to hit the notes and play them in tune. And it looks ridiculous. It's this weight belt with these giant pipes that stick straight out here. And actually, it was really funny when I was leaving. Tom Wade saw that. He saw my belt and goes, "What's that? What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, this is this thing for my saw." He's like, "You wear that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I put it on for him just to show him. And he goes, "They ever call you Mikey Two Dicks?" I'm like, no one's ever called me that. And he goes, oh man, he's like, and then he goes into this little diatribe. He's like, I could see it now. Ladies and gentlemen, Mikey Two Dicks is going to take a little break, and then he'll come right back, and Mikey Two Dicks is going to do another set of saw music for you. Like that was probably my favorite part. It was I got a little Nighthawks at the Diner improvisation for me, and but yeah, it's a hard instrument to play in tune. And the other thing I do is I amplify it. I have a contact mic on it, and so I actually plug it into my whole rig here, and I get all kinds of digital delay, and I can put all my psychedelic effects on it. So I feel like I'm kind of doing my own weird version of the traditional musical saw. There was a guy who passed away, Charlie Blacklock, who was, I think he was president of the International Saw Society, but he's a Bay Area guy too. He's a Santa Cruz dude, and they used to have a festival every year. I never went to it.
That.
Yeah.
Was it in Katati?
No, it was. I thought it was in Santa Cruz. I think.
Oh, okay.
I think it was in Santa Cruz.
Seeing on one of my tours, seeing a flyer and a business card for that.
Yeah, I think he did it. Or it could be someone else who ran it, but Charlie Blacklock actually made really beautiful musical saws too. I have a bunch of them. I bought as many as I could before he passed away, because I thought that maybe when he did, you wouldn't be able to get them anymore, but apparently you still can. But he makes a baritone one and a tenor one, like these different sizes.
With these saws, yeah.
Yeah, the baritone one's amazing because you can still play it just as high, but you can actually get kind of low. And in the lower register, it just has it's not like a bass. They call it a baritone, but it has a pretty resonant, awesome sound, you know?
Do you play theremin as well?
No, I've never played a theremin. I love the theremin.
I can imagine. That's why I'm asking you, you know?
Yeah, no, I feel like my brain is there already because everything I do is, fretless. And with the saw is like an acoustic theremin. That's the way I've always described it to people. But I love the instrument. You've probably done this in Asheville, North Carolina. Whenever I play there, I always go to the Moog factory. You can take the little tour there, which is always so cool. And everybody that works there is super nice. And I just love that whole world over there. And there's they used to do this festival, the Moog Festival, but Moog Festival. I know you're supposed to say it the right way. But yeah, I've never gotten to do that one, but always wanted to. But yeah, the theremin's cool.
You have such amazing stories, and everybody love them. See, like Le Boucherie from Friends. So like this dude is so awesome. I love the stories. But I want to hear you play. We've been talking for almost 2 hours. Sure. I can do you play.
I could do another jam.
Yeah.
This is sort of a let me do this one. Yeah, this is sort of an improvisation, and it's sort of like almost got a kind of a techno, whatever that means anymore, vibe, because it's easy for me to play 4 on the floor with my feet. Even though I can play, I can play a lot more syncopated if I want, but this is something I did for my last recording, so.
Awesome.
Thanks, brother.
I love it. I can't wait to see you play live somewhere.
Yeah, man. Sooner than later, I hope. Yeah.
How many solo albums you recorded so far?
Let's see. Technically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, the first one was the precursor to this, which was actually when I was doing my 2-hour Jupiter gigs on the upright bass, but it was mostly, I had an electric 1-string instrument with this old drum machine that used to belong to Joe Satriani, the drum machine. I didn't know him, but his drummer taught drums to my best friend in high school and sold the drum machine to him. And it was apparently the drum machine he used on that second record he made, the one before Surfing with the Alien, whatever that one's called. I can't remember now. But I had that drum machine, and I had an electric 1-string bass and all these pedals. And I made an album at Polymorph, the studio I was just telling you about. And that was really early experiments as a solo act. It was just really weird, bizarro stuff. And then when I moved away from the Bay to just focus on this, that's when I made my first real record, Songs in the Key of Biatch. And then that one. And then I did The Moon is Disgusting. And actually, The Moon is Disgusting I made with Carl. And it was through that Tom Waits thing, because I was trying to record it by myself, which I had done my last album, and I just couldn't do it. I wasn't happy with it. I just was having so much trouble being a producer. And when I went in to do that Tom Waits session, I got to see 2 songs start to finish in one day. You know, we went in there and he just did his thing. Everybody did what they thought was the right thing according to, everybody had good instincts in there. And watching Carl, the engineer, he's such a genius. Just watching him just facilitate, this kind of productivity. And after the session, I asked him, I'm like, hey, can I hire you to do my album, you think? And he goes, oh, totally. This thing's going to be done in a couple months, and I think I'll have some time then. I'm like, that'd be perfect. It won't take long. And it didn't. It took start to finish in 3 weeks with him. And it was so fun. And it was in that same studio. And the funny thing was that studio I had recorded with my band when I was in high school, like that. We had been going to that studio. It's a Bayview Studios in Richmond. I don't know if it's still there. I don't think it's still there. I think it's gone now. Okay. But I also have all this crazy history at that studio. But so I recorded that. I was discussing with Carl, and then I started going to Atlanta and recording with this great engineer, Billy Hume. And I did Packs a Wallop in my Ocean album, which the first jam I played for you was off of that. And then my most recent thing I actually did myself, and I had Carl mix it. I went to his new studio in the Bay Area just to mix it. But I did all the production myself here with Logic. I've been working super hard to try to learn. Like we were talking about earlier, how to just do as much as you can by yourself. And it's like, it's a funny thing. Like I saw somebody on, I think it was Instagram. They were like a musician saying how unfair it is now that the world is expecting us to be like engineers and mastering engineers and videographers and musicians, and songwriters, all these things. And I was thinking, it's not just that. We're expected to be good at it too. Like we're expected to be good at mastering, like, which is an insane, it's an insane, skill set to have to try to learn or be expected to learn. It's kind of unreasonable. But, at the same time, you think back to guys like, back in the day that would do they would do everything. Leonardo da Vinci was designing bridges and and making and then doing paintings. So I guess, but yeah, he's kind of the exception though. Who am I kidding?
Interesting, example. So how many albums you
sorry. So the last one, Ocean One, Packs a Wall, Moon's Disgusting Song, The Key of 6, and then there was this like little remix thing I did. So yeah, I say, but 6 real records, 6 real solo records.
And the new is coming up.
What's that?
You said that you have a material for a new album. As well.
I do. The annoying thing is the one I just finished. I literally put it out March. It was like March 12th. Like I was on the road. I was on the road and I released it. And then it was like 2 days later was like they were talking about gigs canceling, like a couple of gigs. And then like 2 days after that, I was driving home from Richmond, Virginia, because my entire tour was canceled. I'm sure there's plenty of people with a similar story, but like I had just put the album out. Like I had worked 3 years on it. I'd released it. I'm driving and I have 2,000 of them in my van, that I just had pressed, like the CDs. And I was like, I had t-shirts and everything. I'd spent all this money making merch for my tour that just never even happened. I got 2-3 weeks into that tour and came home, but it's not the end of the world. It's just the timing was so funny, but I have a bunch of other material that I'm kind of ready to do another one. Cause this actually feels like a long time ago now. It's as crazy as that sounds. It's like, I never really put the record out, but it doesn't feel like my new stuff anymore,
Oh yeah.
It's so weird.
With my band, we released an album like a few months before that. And last year was supposed to be like full on touring and full on, headlining festivals and everything. And then,
oh man.
And started mid-March. It was literally, we were practicing, a lot. And then starting mid-March was supposed to be, starting touring like crazy. And then
that's brutal, man. It's the annoying thing is like, always trying to kind of quantify where we fit in as musicians to just the world, because this is what we do. We do it because we love it. Some people take music really seriously. Other people think it's just more of an entertainment thing. I mean, and that's not even for us to decide. We play, we're passionate about what we do. However anybody wants to accept it is almost none of our business. But then, you have something like this happen, and then they start they start throwing around terminology like essential worker, frontline worker, which absolutely, people in hospitals, all that stuff is like, way up there. I don't feel like what I do almost has any relevance to any of this stuff in a weird way, even though music is so important for all of us. But I feel, I think the part that's been messing with my head more than anything is this idea that I'm like the most non-essential, worker ever. Cause like, the size of venues that I play, those are going to be the last things to come back during all this. I think it's going to happen pretty soon. I'm actually super optimistic. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot longer, crossing my fingers, but it's a weird thing to kind of like, not like try to put your career in a place of like, does it matter? Does it even matter? Like, are all these venues going to even be there? I mean, I think they're going to be. I hopefully there's a really cool venue like pretty much right next door to where I live, downtown in Vegas here. That's like all shut down and it's all plywood. But I think somebody else bought it. And I think they're going to open it up again. So I'm not trying not to be doom and gloom, but it's just a weird feeling to us, like even restaurants are going to open up before they let live music back, it's just like, ugh, like, I guess they'll tell us, whoops, sorry, push the wrong button, but I guess they'll tell us when it's time, but it's just so weird. Like letting a whole year go by and being like, I guess we still have a career, but we do this, so it's fun.
It's really weird. I mean, it kind of gives, for all those people that, I'm sure you came across like saying like, oh, your music is, you're just, that's not a job. Like you're just doing that for fun.
Which is cool in a way, it's not that I wouldn't agree with them. I was like, you're right. Yeah. I'm just having fun, because that like we get the last laugh, we get to just screw around and this is our life, and then turns out they got the last laugh because we're not allowed to do our stuff anymore. But no, I know what you mean. It's like, it's that funny, weird glitch in the matrix which is what a music career is. It's like, like this version of it, especially it's nobody would have told me this was possible, like all the adults coming up. Oh, I want to play music, you'd say. And they say, whoa, the music career is really hard. It's really hard. And you're like, oh, I guess it is. And like we talked about that earlier. And then you're just doing it. And it's like, you kind of live this really weird, like touring, for example, it's a kind of work that really nobody would ever want to do. I think, I even had a manager for a little while that came out with me for 4 days of one of my tours and just couldn't believe it. He's just like, I can't believe you do this. This is impossible. Like I'm exhausted just watching this, you're driving 8 hours a day. You're not sleeping that much. You're setting all this stuff up and you're just doing it all for this 2-hour show, and I'm like, I can't imagine doing anything else. This is just what I do. And so it doesn't feel like work to me, but from somebody watching me from a, different angle, different perspective, they think, wow, that's just insane. You're out of your mind to want to do this thing. And that's another fun part about all this. It's like, it's fun because you kind of have to be a bit nuts to do it. And I guess that's where, the passion comes in. You're passionate about your work, about what you do. You love it. So you do it at all costs, but yeah, like in terms of taking it seriously, I think that's the fun part, that you don't necessarily have to. It's like, music should be fun. And you should take the work part serious, but it should still be a celebration of the absurd. I think in a sense, that's what my favorite music always has been. So it's like when life suddenly all around you gets really heavy and serious, it's like, well, shoot, where does this completely goofy thing that I do fit in to this, But that's the fun part for me lately is it's feeling so relevant because like, it's the only thing keeping me, from going insane. It like is just kind of like setting up my little space here and just being a goofball. It's like, well, I still got that. They can't take that away from me.
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs music, and I would say, we're one of the most essential kind of workers, because without music, what's it's life without spice, without any flavor? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely, I 1,000% agree with you, and I hope you didn't take it the wrong way. What I said earlier, it was like, it's just that weird battle in my own head, like.
Oh yeah, I know.
Like my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, is a doctor, and does surgery on people. And I remember thinking, wow, what a heavy gig, like I always thought I worked hard. And then I watched her, and like once a month they have to be on call, and not sleep and then do surgery. And like, it's so heavy, and they do such important, amazing work. And I remember thinking, oh, I just play funny songs about outer space and whales and stuff, but I agree with you. It's like, I know for me, the music is everything to me. That's all I want to do is listen to music, listen to people talk about music, listen to people talk about how it's constructed and get way inside of it. To me, it's an entire universe, and it is the most important thing. And yeah, we are important. I totally agree. It's, the other hard part about all this too is historically, entertainment has always been a recession-proof industry, like even in the worst recessions, in the Great Depression in America, and in the recession that the other recession we had in 2008, I mean, music's never affected by it, because people love music, and there's always room for it. There's always room for entertainment. And this is the first time where I feel like our industry has been so directly affected by, a lot of industries have, obviously, but I mean, ours is getting clobbered, man. I mean, like it's crazy. Like I couldn't have ever seen this coming, and it was maybe it's a good reality check in a way. Because
I mean, what kind of bugs me is that the outside, normal world even does not realize how much this whole situation stopped our lives way more than the other industries, because they consider us it's those guys are just having fun. It doesn't really matter,
I think that's the part that bothers me. I think when I say we're non-essential, I'm watching us through their eyes. You know what I mean? Because it's like, because I always felt that it wasn't my business to tell other people to take me seriously. It's like, because everyone's got their own lives to live, and life is hard. Life's hard for everybody. So I would never impose what I think your priority should be on anyone else. I mean, I know I'm a weirdo. I spend most of my time just lost in my crazy, weird music, and other people have different priorities, and it's just as legit for them as it is my stuff is for me. But so I think what you just said is the part that bothers me the most. It's like, yeah, I think I like some of these little venues that we play. I mean, I don't think most people even know they're there. Like, if they just disappear, I don't think they'd miss them, because, I think the most beautiful part about underground music is that guy that's promoting it just loves it. You love slap bass, it's a very specific thing. You have this beautiful passion for this technique, and you're creating a whole world around it, and then you go to a little club, and there's a guy who just loves punk rock, and he's just going to have a show or like a noise show or something. Like, they're just going to do this thing for the love of it and support it and bring you there. They're probably not even going to make a whole lot of bread off of it, but they just want to see this thing happen, and most of the world has no idea that stuff's going on. It's not. In certain countries, it can be, subsidized by, by the scene and even the government sometimes. But
government,
yeah, but not here. Here, like the whole American ideal was like, well, do it, just make it happen, do it for yourself. And so like,
which is kind of the thing that I like most of the time.
Me too.
Except it's kind of this weird glitch.
Yeah, right now it hurts. Right now it really hurts because. I am optimistic, and it is that funny thing about, the human spirit and just humanity in general. I think, we're survivors. So the second that the second that they're going to let us, I just know that like a bunch of stuff might be gone, but there'll just be a bunch
be a party.
Yeah, there'll be a party for like, yeah, I just really feel it. I know I'm like itching like crazy to get back out there and just
you know, Labashiri like wrote punk rock bowling is supposed to happen in September in Las Vegas. So
I saw that. No, I saw the flyer, and actually that venue I was just telling you about, they take a big part of punk rock bowling. So I could literally watch. They set up an outside stage for that thing, and such amazing music, right? Like literally across the street. Yeah, they said September. Did they say September, I think, or October?
September,
right? Because normally it would be June, I think. But yeah, I really hope. I don't know. I feel like it could, because the numbers are dropping like crazy, and with the vaccine and all that. I feel like the minute people can, they're just gonna.
Oh yeah,
you know, I think, and once you open that door too, I think that's gonna be it. You know,
nobody's gonna close it after that.
No, we're like, okay, we did that other thing already. You know, we just did, and you know,
so we might end up being the most essential at that point, right?
You know what? Maybe people will realize what they've been missing. You know, like I'm hoping that's the case, because
you mentioned that you're looking at things, you're trying to look at things from their eyes, but you know, I think I'm done.
No, I hear, dude.
I'm like, that world is boring. This more colorful.
I was more that way before. Like I even think before the pandemic, I was always kind of like trying to see everything. You know, I'm completely like, okay, coffee, music, that's the whole universe, man.
Oh, yeah.
Take it or leave it. And no, I'm done being a diplomat too, man. I think you know,
I've been trying this whole year. I mean, this whole year, like, you know, really to, you know, take all of these things in perspective, and then it doesn't work for me.
No, I hear you. Well, you know, life is short too.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like I mean the one nice thing that I got initially was I felt like for myself 2000 sort of 16, 17, 18, I was a little bit on autopilot. I was feeling like because every year I was trying to make a new album, and it would always end up taking me years and years, and then like I started working on this one in 2016. I just couldn't finish it. And like I finished it right before this pandemic thing. And it was sort of like, it was kind of a good thing in a way, just to make me stop and say, all right, you gotta keep pushing forward. You can't just coast, you know? And I felt like it wasn't that I wasn't getting things done, but I think when things go back to normal, it's going to be different, and I can already tell I'm going to approach everything a little differently. Like I think I'm going to do my show a little differently. I don't want to waste as much time. I don't want to just, you know, and so that part for me has been kind of cool. Just like, just, you know what, you can't just like assume next year is going to be just like the year before, because it might not. So I think you got to dig in, you know, really hard, you know, and go for it. And also even just all the stuff I'm learning with the tech, you know, is actually really fun. And I want to bring all that to my live show, like way harder than I was doing before, you know, hopefully.
I have one more question. It's kind of related to what we're talking now. How did, from your perspective, music business and music audience changed since you start being a professional musician comparable to now?
You know, it's funny. For as much talk as there's always been about how the industry's constantly changing, it's kind of the same as it ever was. In a way, I mean, the thing about the internet, of course, such a broad way to say it, but you know, I booked my very first tour. I guess the internet was definitely a thing. It was 2000 when I finished my first album and I started working on my tour. And I feel lucky in a way, because there was email kinda, but there wasn't YouTube. You couldn't send somebody a link. And so what I did, this was kind of a loophole in the system. I made a video of my setup and my playing. And I made a video cassette, a VHS cassette, because I remember thinking everybody still has a VCR. That literally in 2000, everyone still had VCR still. DVDs were just coming in. You couldn't really make a DVD yet. And people were making CD-ROMs, but nobody could play them because everybody didn't have the right software. So I was sending out these VHS tapes, and I was sending out thousands of packages, and I was just calling people, cold calling. And it wasn't as hard as I think it is now, because I made all these amazing, made all these kind of relationships in the business, and they've all become friends, and I go to these clubs and I play with these people that have been some of them have been promoting me since 2000. And I ask them, I say, how is it going? And they say it's so much harder now, because they'll open their email and they'll get, hundreds of video links, and they can't watch them. You can't watch them all. But like my VHS tape kind of always made it through, because nobody was doing that. And I think that the ease of the technology and stuff is incredible. And like the social media way of connecting with your people is just awesome. I actually feel sorry for, there was a time with early MTV where you had to make a video. You had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a video, and you had to get it on MTV. And there was literally 20 slots, and that was it. They had a rotation, and maybe they'd play it once if they, and that wouldn't be enough. And we're so lucky that we can just, I gotta stop doing that. Sorry. Hold on, let me change sounds there. Yeah, we're so lucky that we can just find our audience. You can start a show about slap bass. I mean, that's amazing when you think about it. Think about when I was a kid. I mean, I know I said this already, but I had a subscription to Guitar Player magazine, and I'd get one ad about bass, a bass ad, and maybe an article. If I was lucky, there'd be an article on Billy Sheehan or something. That was it. That was all we got. And now it's just there's endless amounts of resources for, you could watch Victor Wooten talk about something. You could watch Edgar Meyer do, you could just literally any corner of the technique or the industry, you can go explore, endlessly explore. I'm loving that part. I mean, myself, it's just I've been studying production a lot, and I'm there's this guy I've been listening to who does a 3-hour show. Like we were saying, he goes 3 hours of just talking about an album that he made, and he just gives away all the secrets, and I was thinking, the only way I would have learned this before was to intern with this guy. I would have had to be there, and now I can just hear him talk about it, and I can just get the plug in, and figure it can't do as good of a job. But yeah.
But do you think that people appreciate it less because it's so much available now and it's present?
They have to. They have to be. I think younger kids have to be spoiled by this. But to their credit, I mean, it's speeding up evolution and ability. I mean, here in Vegas, I do a bit of magic and sleight of hand. I'm that's kind of a passion of mine too. And Penn from Penn and Teller was saying, he's a juggler, and he was saying he's a jazz bass player too, and he was saying that when he was a kid, if you were a good juggler, you could juggle 3. And if you were really good, you could do 4 and maybe 5. And then anything above that, anything above 5 things juggling, you were a prodigy of some kind. And he says now it's super common to see a 12-year-old kid doing 5 and 6 and 7. And it's only because they've seen it done. It's not even because it's hard to learn. It's hard to learn, but early on, they were proven, they were shown that it was possible because they saw somebody do it. And I think that's the thing that was keeping everybody from doing that at an early age, was you just didn't know. You didn't see it. If you were good enough to go to a juggling convention, you'd see somebody do that and you'd be like, oh my God, that's possible. I'm going to try to do that. But now on anywhere, on TikTok or something, you can just see somebody do that and go, oh, that's possible. I didn't know that was even a thing. I'm going to try that, you know? And I've been thinking about that with cooking, because I don't cook at all, like hardly. And I'm kind of learning now because I'm stuck here, like losing my mind. And like, I've been seeing like, like on TikTok, I've been seeing like these amazing people cooking stuff. And I'm going, wow. And it looks like the way it's filmed and everything, because the iPhones are so good, it looks like a cooking channel thing. Like, and it's just somebody it's just some normal person doing this. And they're like, not only does it look cinematic and epic, but it's like a beautiful recipe. And I'm like, I think I can. I look at it a little more and I read it. I'm like, that's not that hard. I could do that, I guess. I mean, I got to go get all that stuff, but it's not like this. It's not like this far away, impossible to reach,
unreachable like before.
Yeah, it's not unreachable.
Back in the day.
Exactly. And like your podcast is a perfect example. I mean, you can talk to almost anybody now. You can get your favorite bass players in the world on your thing. I mean, that's incredible, you know? I mean, like who you've had already. It's like, I don't know that. Can you imagine trying to do something like that 20 years ago?
You know, but for me, was like, what actually inspired me to do this is when I was going to New Orleans and I was listening to all those interviews from bass players from the 20s and 30s, because they were filming them in the 50s. I mean, recording the audio. And now I was listening to all those interviews from, you know, Pops Foster and Steve Brown and all those cats from the 20s. And I'm thinking, you know, bass players still don't get any more media attention than back in those days. So if I don't do it now, nobody gonna do it.
It's true.
In the slap bass world, it was like, and the Corona thing is like, this is the time to do it. So I feel like, you know, I want to document all these stories, and then I don't have any other ambition with it, but except to kind of establish the technique as much as possible, and also present all of you guys, you know, and hopefully present, you know, for the new audience, you know, and so, you know, it's working so far. I'm happy, you know. It's
beautiful, man. It's beautiful, cool. Because, well, it's fun. I mean, when you sent me that message, I was like, I mean, I could talk about slap bass all day, you know, like it's kind of my whole world, really. I mean, this whole thing is rooted in literally in waka waka waka, you know, abada, you know, that's like where this all came from. And like, I mean, even to my detriment, you know, I was almost kind of hinting to that earlier when you were saying, why do you think it disappeared? But in some ways, I mean, I think I would lose gigs sometimes because I was so into it, you know, like not everybody wants to play with the guy that goes abada, you know, but it's also like, that's what we do. You know, that's like, I mean, this is what it's turned into for me. I mean, it's turned into this instrument that like takes that technique and kind of just allows me to be more musical with it than I could before, you know, especially with melody. I think I was late to the party, you know, with melody. I mean, I was I think we're very much rhythm based people as slap percussive bass players. You know, going to music school and playing the Kusevitsky concerto, that's absolute melody. But that's a pretty rare thing. I don't think too many of us have done that. I mean, I barely did it. I mean, I did it in music school, but boy, was that hard. That stuff is so difficult. But you know, like 2 albums ago for me was the first time I really started thinking about melody more. I was like, I was like actually craving it. I was hungry to play melodic stuff. And I started writing a little bit more on the piano here and thinking about, you know, changes. Just thinking about melodies over changes, and it's so new to me. I've been playing music my whole life, you know, for like decades and decades, and melody is this like kind of still uncharted territory for me. It's all kind of new and fresh, and it's kind of fun. But you know, yeah, the rhythm thing is that's where our hearts are, you know, and all this stuff for sure.
I feel that we've been talking a lot. You know, can I hear you play a little more?
Sure. Yeah, I can do
All
another one
right.
for you.
Before that, I'm gonna read the last comment. Yeah, from Jose Arana. This show is one of the best examples of making the best of a bad situation.
That's all we can do.
All we can do.
That's all we can do, brother.
All right. Awesome.
Thanks, brother.
I would love to hear more about an instrument. So how many of those have you made so far?
This is the third.
The third.
Yeah, this is the third. It's actually a crazy story because the first one was plumbing pipe, just straight out of the Home Depot. Same exact.
I have to show before you said, because you started getting into that. So yeah. Peter Djordjevic wrote, "Wow, that is so awesome! I want to build one too." And Cloudberry wrote, "Just bring a circular saw with you the next time you shower."
Exactly.
All right.
I've heard them all, by the way.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, the industrial, homespun. I mean, it was a funny thing because actually, yeah, you said you knew Carla and those Sleepy Time. Did you know the Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, folks?
I never met him, but I know of
Okay,
them.
Dan is a phenomenal bass player. He was the first guy I ever saw actually building instruments. They all kind of build their own instruments over there, and I wasn't copying an idea of his specifically, but I saw him build. It was a giant. I think he called it like a slide piano. It was like it had these piano strings and it was a giant metal. It was so gnarly and cool. And I think he built it onto like a railroad tie or something. And I remember thinking I could build my own instrument because actually you might know him too in the Bay Area. There's an instrument builder named Charlie Novak. He built those fan fretted guitars. I think Charlie Hunter, his early instruments were built by this guy. And I called him actually because I had this idea and he said, yeah, we can try it. And he was pretty expensive. I remember thinking, I don't know. I don't have that kind of money and I don't want to just experiment. I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I can't see it. I have a concept, but not a very detailed vision of this. And so it was the guitar player in my band that told me, hey, why don't you try to just build it yourself? And so I would go to the Home Depot. There was one that was close to me. Sounds like an endorsement, but it was just the place that was there. And I would just walk up and down the aisles and just look at stuff, because I knew I wanted to build something. I don't know anything about woodworking. I knew how hard it was to build a bass. I know like to plane a fingerboard, all that stuff. That is so hard. I didn't want to have to learn a new trade. I didn't want to be an instrument builder. I wanted to play, I wanted to play this thing. So I would just walk up and down the aisles and I started finding these pipes and I was just shocked at what I found. I was like, I found this clamp and I'm like, oh, that could be a bridge, and I started coming up with things and then I came up with a whole idea for the tuning mechanisms. Actually, you can see this one a little bit better. I came up with all these ideas of how, and then, I carved, a nut into the metal and everything. This is the old one that I'm talking about. And it was mostly pipes. And, and I had booked a gig to play it as a deadline to finish it because I'm so bad at finishing stuff. And it was down at the cannery at Fisherman's Wharf there. They used to let you play outside on that stage. And they used to let me play there Friday nights, like early. And I booked that gig to do it. And I finished it. And I I was saying earlier, I was going to build a body. I bailed on that idea because I didn't know how to do it. I ended up just duct taping the triggers right to the pipe. The first version, it looked like this, but it was all duct tape and stuff. And it worked. Shockingly, it actually worked. It sounded really good. I had a really good magnetic pickup on there. The string, it's just a bass string. I mean, this is an E string, but it's tuned to a low C actually. It's tuned to a low C below an E. And it's definitely a longer scale length, even though it's a regular E string. I'm going all the way to the yarn on both sides. So believe it or not, like this is a half step. It's like, they're huge. It's actually hard to play the bass parts, but it sounds really good because there's a nice juicy fundamental because it's such a low string, but it's also pretty taut, and then this is the high G. So it's almost like an octave and a fifth away. And yeah, it kind of worked. And I had all these pedals and all these effects and all this crazy. There was no computers involved in any of this stuff for the first 10 years. It was just all hardware, everything. And then in 2008, as I was telling you earlier, when I was supposed to play Bliss Fest the first time, I was in Montreal for the Jazz Fest and my van got stolen with all my stuff in it. I had to rebuild everything from scratch. And I met this amazing machinist who's a friend of our family's actually. He's a friend of my brother's wife's brother. and he lives in rural New Mexico. And he, believe it or not, he's an aerospace machinist. He built machined parts for the Phoenix Mars lander. And he's also a painter and a guitar player. So they thought, oh, this guy can help you rebuild. You know, you want to rebuild and get back out on the road. So I went to him and I lived with them for 2 months. We stayed out there and we worked on this thing and we built number 2. Number 2 was a mess. It didn't really work very well. And that was a hard year. I played that whole year with number 2 and it wasn't as good as the aerospace version wasn't as good as my Home Depot plumbing pipe for some reason. But me and him, we decided we could see clearly everything that was wrong with number 2. So we started working on number 3 while I toured flying number 2 for a year. And then this is number 3. This is amazing, this one. And we did all this. He machined all the, it's all the same mechanisms. It's all the stuff I built. But he machined all these housings, for the triggers. And then, he did all this machining for the tuning machines and the headstocks. And then I used to just turn the joints for the movement before, but then he made all these joints out of high density Delrin or something on the end. Like it's all super, the articulations are perfect, for this stuff. So this is number 3. And I've had number 3 since 2011. We finished it. And the second I was done with it and then it worked, I was like, all right, I'm done making stuff. I just want to play. And of course I'm constantly upgrading the you can't really see the floor. Actually, let me go like this. See the floor. Oh yeah, see, these are all my kick pedals.
But you have lots of pedals down there.
Oh yeah. I have actually during the quarantine I've doubled my pedals. I've been doing when I do my broadcast, I'm manipulating all the visuals with my feet also. So I wanted to make. I always like to have 2 or 3 different kick drums. Sometimes I'll have a kick drum with a crash like that one. Different snare drums for my left foot. I mean, it's very much in the old tradition of a kind of an old school one-man band in a way. It's got that energy to it as well. But then there's just all this crazy technology too. And my sampler that I was using was an old SP808 that ran on zip disks, which are completely obsolete now. I was buying them on eBay, but I eventually had to move over to a computer. I didn't want to initially, but I'm so glad I have, because all the broadcast stuff that I'm doing, I mean, all that stuff is happening internally, and I can keep all this, especially with the new OS, I can keep all my music software up, and it all just feeds. It's super complicated, but it works so well. And none of this would have been possible 10 years ago with my hardware. I don't know how I would have done any of this back then, but it's I got lucky. There's this software called MainStage that's like the live version of Logic, and it's the absolute perfect thing to take the place of the hardware that I was using, because the effects are so good. I was doing all this envelope filtering, for all the funky stuff. That was all like that was all old filters and envelopes and distortions and sans amps. I had this whole matrix of parallel processing with that, and now I do all that stuff internally, and it's better. It's like some of the plugins and stuff are just as cool as the pedals, but in some ways better.
Talking about that, what are you using as far as the gear goes besides the Magic Pipe?
These days it's literally an interface. I have this custom trigger input module for all my trigger buttons, and that was something they stopped making. Also, there's actually this dude, I think he's in Finland. It's this thing, he makes this thing called a mega drum, and he kind of makes them to order. They're actually not expensive, because he sort of puts it in this real funny little housing. But the circuitry is really good, and it's real customizable. I've ordered from him a bunch of times. I've actually ordered like 3 or 4 versions of this thing. So I use that, and then I also have an Arduino, which is this little open source little circuit board computer thing, which these triggers plug into, because these are a little different. These are actually well, the feet are touch sensitive, but these are more like they're more like you can do on off stuff, and you can hold notes and stuff. You can't do that with the triggers. The triggers are more like velocity sensitive for kick drums, you know, or drums rather. So the Arduino, the Mega Drum, and then for the strings, I used to have, like I was saying, this crazy pedal array. And I had this really amazing device called a switchblade that could switch 16 inputs, 16 outputs, and it could route anything to anything with MIDI. I don't have to do any of that anymore because it's all internal. So that's just a computer with main stage. But, you know, if you look at my project, it's super complicated. Like a song like this, you know, like this big string is going through 4 different channels. And each one's doing a different kind of filtering, envelope filtering. I do lots of pitch shifting, tons of pitch shifting. And then I'm doing that a whole lot with that last song I played, like different reverbs and delays for the small string, for the melody stuff that I was telling you about. And so it's that world's opened me up to just so many possibilities. And then there's all these companies making plugins, super cool. You always got to be careful because every time you upgrade, you know, half of them aren't compatible anymore, or the company goes out of business and they stop making them, or they stop supporting it, or, you know, it's sort of, I guess it's kind of like gear. It's kind of like real gear. It has the same life cycle, but yeah, there's so many more options now. So that's mostly it. But then, and then the whole, you know, I have this whole setup with controllers. I also have these little buttons and stuff, and I have a turntable here because during my show I do DJ kind of stuff with my turntable too. So yeah, it's a big pile of junk.
Do you use any kind of traditional amps?
No, I used to when I played my 1-string electric bass, I had 3 different, I had a bass amp and 2 guitar amps, and I split my signal 3 ways. And it was cool. That the whole thing I was trying to do was be like a guitar, like 2 guitar players and a bass player playing in unison. I was kind of going for that kind of big sound. And I'm still doing that. I'm still doing that approach, but no amps. For the first 2 tours I had these giant speakers I brought with me everywhere. And then I started realizing it was just diminishing returns, like, because I had them behind me and I was just blasting the audience in the face, and they weren't even hearing the PA, and I was blasting myself for no reason, you know, because the whole idea of having an amp behind you is really a weird thing when you think about it. You know, you're not actually hearing it, you're feeling it. Bass is different because you're feeling it, but like a guitar player playing with his amp behind him is a really weird thing when you know, you're not getting any of that high end because your ears are facing the other direction, but you're blasting your audience in the face. And I think I just don't think that's the future of live music, because amp simulation is so good now and the sound systems are so amazing. And the first time I played a real club with really good monitors, and I remember he gave me a little bit of myself in the wedges, and I was like, oh man, I could just turn my speakers off. I don't have to carry these things around with me everywhere. And that was really liberating, just to let that go. It was a bit of a security blanket, you know, it's a security blanket being you know, especially coming from the bass world. Like, I have to have my amp, I have to have my sound, you know, and going direct is always like, who knows?
But nowadays, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's like, you know, punk rock bands that do shows without amps. I was
Totally.
on tour with a band from Germany, and they were like punk rock. You know, they played like big shows, like nothing, no monitors,
Wow,
in ear, and no amps, but they were playing. You know,
that's awesome. I mean, if you can
kind
trust your sound guy, you know, they probably
I
out of
mean, you kind of have to bring your own sound guy at that point.
Oh,
because,
definitely.
everything could go wrong.
Totally.
What I'm interested, I usually cover traditional slap bass technique, and I know that you're very well aware of that. I wonder how much do you incorporate that into your playing and your music?
I'd say a lot. I mean, this thing has its own technique that I didn't foresee. That I'll explain a little bit. Like it's funny. I've watched a few of the episodes. I love your show, man. And it was fun to watch different people describe, because there's names for some of this stuff that I didn't necessarily know. Like with electric bass slapping, it's a different language because it's the thumb, and it's you're striking the string, you're bouncing the string off the fingerboard or off the frets. The metal string on the metal frets is what makes that wicked slap bass funk Marcus Miller tone, right? Upright bass is totally the opposite. You don't get that. You don't get sustain. You can get beautiful sustain, with the fingerboard and the wood and the fretless thing. But in terms of percussive slapping, that's another battle we're constantly facing. You pull the string way back and it spanks the fingerboard. And a lot of times you're just going to get a transient thwack, and you're not even going to get a whole lot of tone if you don't have things set up properly, And so slapping on the upright, it's the way I think about it is like it's the opposite of slapping on the electric bass, because you slap and you pop on the electric bass. The slap on the upright bass is really a pop. It's almost not a slap. You know what I mean? When you're slapping, when you're pulling, I guess it's a slap when you're coming back.
Wait. I mean, if you compare it to electric bass playing, yes, then it would be a pop, but slap on upright started way before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just meaning like the strike. When I say slap, I mean the strike. Okay. So I probably shouldn't even use that word slap, because that means a bigger thing in this context. I believe me, I get it. But what I was saying was like to play, because I was trying to play funk upright bass slapping, for a while with my band, and it was really interesting because I couldn't do this as much. It was, it's this, it's the pull. So like, you call this a pull. This is really the slap, this is really slapping. This is really pulling. And, you have this kind of, that's not a good sound for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have the double stops, and then, have all the different kind of left hand percussive articulation. I mean, that's left over from, the upright bass for me. That kind of triplet thing, like with single things, doubles. I know there's more. There's a lot more. I know that I don't think I ever even got to.
All right, so I'm curious about that. Can you demonstrate basically all slap patterns that you're using on the
magic pipe? Let me think about it. So
use the terminology that you usually use.
Okay,
so that's what I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So there's even another weird part to this, which is the guitar player in my band was doing this shit too with his this guitar. And when you're slapping on guitar, it's almost like slapping on the upright bass. You can't really get a lot of tone from your thumb. He would do this weird thing where he was pulling. He was pulling like we're pulling here. And so like we would write riffs together that we would play in unison that almost had the same technique, which got me thinking about this stuff. But then I toured there's that phenomenal guitar player Buckethead. We did a bunch of stuff together, and he does crazy slapping on the guitar, which does all these things. He does the pull thing, he does the slap thing. He's also kind of incorporating this picking thing. it's pretty deep. It's pretty deep. And I think about that way also on the small string here, because I can do that. So let me think, like I guess singles, that kind of vibe, doubles, kind of energy. If I had the body of the instrument, that kind of thing. But you can do it here too. And then there's all the thumb stuff. So it's like that's the idea, was that part of the idea too. I'm sorry, I'm going a million places at once here. Part of the idea too for the metal surface was it's almost like a metal fingerboard, almost like a fret. So I can do slap, electric style slapping, and I don't use my thumb as much on this. I actually use my whole hand, so it turns into more of a drum thing. Actually, hold on. Let me pull up that. Whoops. But that kind of idea. And but yeah, so what do I name? Do I have names for any of this stuff? I don't think I do, man. It's just kind of all over the place. But it was weird, because when I was slapping on the upright, I didn't have anybody to talk about it with. I didn't know any rock. I didn't know any rockabilly guys. Like the scene in the Bay wasn't like, the swing thing was big, jazz thing was huge, but there wasn't a lot of slappy guys. And I hadn't seen too many people even do it, to be honest. We got to open. I mean, the Hedgehogs, we had gotten to open for Lee Rocker, who I had been a fan of since I was a little kid. And it was like, that was amazing to get to see him do that thing in real life. But yeah, I can't and then Milton Hinton, that was the only time I actually ever saw it done. So I didn't get to talk to anybody about any of this stuff. Who's amazing, who's one of the best I'd ever seen do it was Joe Fick, who you had on. I opened for, we played together. We played in Arkansas. I played with the Dempseys, which was his old band. And I hadn't, cool. Yeah. And I hadn't seen, he was doing things I hadn't ever seen anybody do before. It was like kind of different, just totally different approach. And it was really neat. It was really neat. Like if those guys were only in the Bay Area, we would have been friends back in the olden days. But I think this might've been right before they split up, because I don't think they're doing it anymore. But I watched his episode with you, and it was really just awesome. And you guys were talking about somebody else's technique, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It was like a weird, like a little, almost a flamenco kind of vibe. I was going to ask you about that.
We've been probably talking about Nicolas Duboucher.
That's what it was. Yeah. Who is that?
He's actually the guy that I featured when I started this whole project.
I got to watch that one. Yeah. It was amazing.
When I started the project Art of Slap Bass in 2009,
okay,
he's the first guy that I featured in the interview and the website and my channel.
Okay, cool.
I had YouTube just open. I don't know, like a few years before that, opened up, and somebody from from North Bay wanted to interview me, but they were like, nobody knows you about you, and there's this new website, and then you can called YouTube, so you can upload your videos. Like, all right, I uploaded it, and that kind of went viral in the bass world. But I felt weird because it was kind of like like I don't want to put myself there, So I'm like, let me just like do slap and then feature everybody else. So that was my kind of the idea, how I started.
Awesome.
Art of Slap
Just
Bass,
awesome.
And that kind of developed. But check out Nicolas Duboucher. Check out the first episode of the Art of Slap Bass and the Slapstream.
I will. No, because you guys were talking about it, and I actually rewound it a few times because I was watching both of you guys doing that thing, and I couldn't figure out how it was happening.
Just don't use the thumb.
Okay, it's not a thumb thing. I guess you guys have your thumbs out, but you're not using it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a palm thing.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a no-no.
Kind of.
I get it. I totally get it. I
mean, I'm not sure if you heard, but this does not apply to you, but it does apply to the electric bass technique, because at the end of every show I say, don't forget, never fret.
Hey, I'm fretless, man. I'm right there with you. No, I got a metal surface, but you know what? I'm no more thumb for me. No more thumb for. So it's a palm thing.
Palm thing, yeah.
Cool. All right,
like
I'm in.
Side,
I'm in.
Side here, and then you thumb, palm, and then you pull it.
Oh, okay. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3.
In that case, it's 4. Yeah, the fourth one is the note.
Okay. Wow, beautiful. Oh, but the note itself is a pull.
Always. Yeah.
Okay. I get it now. I love it.
Yeah, actually, Joe Fick just texted me and he said that he's watching the episode.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, he's so good. He's so amazing.
Great,
like, yeah. We played at Sticky's in Arkansas, in Little Rock, Arkansas together. And then I ran into them at this festival. I remember every gig at the festival in Tampa, the Ybor City Music Festival. Yeah, they were together. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess. It was cool to see. Yeah, so good. Yeah.
Actually, Bashir asked me to show you, so let me show
Oh,
you.
please. Oh, that'd be great, because I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't make heads or tails about it.
So this bass is not really for that, but let me see. Okay, since it's I have steel strings and all of that. Let me see. Okay, so this is it. So the idea is that you do this.
Okay. It's feeling like a thumb to me, my friend. Hate to call you out.
I mean, well, yes, but it's not in an electric way.
No, I know. I'm just playing. So
I have to,
one more time. Ah, okay. 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 I gotta practice it, but I get you. Wow, that's cool. That's really cool.
Few things that you can definitely incorporate, from even from these psychobilly people that would work actually well for.
Oh, definitely. Who else should I be checking out? Maybe you can. All of them. I'll just watch the whole stream. I'll watch all the back episodes.
Just binge watch them.
No, I will. I mean, that's what I mean. It's like a real true resource, because I didn't have anybody to talk about this stuff with.
The longest one is 6 hours, though.
Wow. Beautiful. I love it. 6 hours of slapping the bass.
Yeah. What else? Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, do you teach? Do you ever teach?
Yeah, I did. I taught a lot for a long time. At the very, very beginning, not the very beginning, but when I was in the music school conservatory, I would teach upright and electric bass, and I had a lot of students for a minute. I was just doing it one day a week, but I would cram them in. I would do half-hour lessons, and I would go for 10 hours. I had so many students.
Oh,
and
cool.
it was great. What's that?
You were teaching classical at that time?
Yeah, a little bit. Most of my students were upright. Most of my students were electric. A few of them were real serious, kind of jazz, classically, more jazz though. It's so funny. Nobody was ever that serious about the classical at that age, because most of my students were teenagers, you know. I had a few older students, but I had just started taking lessons from that amazing teacher I was telling you about that really taught me, you know, how to truly hold the German bow the right way. Brian Marcus.
Okay.
He was I think he might still be in the symphony. He was in the SF Symphony. And when I was going to the conservatory, I was studying with Steve Tramontozzi, who's this phenomenal, amazing, you know, classical player, but he held French bow. And I just never felt like we had enough to talk about where technique was concerned. You know what I mean? Like, I know it sounds crazy, but the bow is so important with that stuff. And Brian Marcus had such a beautiful way of explaining, like what I was talking about earlier about using the weight of your body and relaxing. And he always said that playing should be effortless. And I'd never heard anybody say that before, because it never felt effortless to me. The upright bass always felt like a wrestling match, you know. And but with Brian, it was like, you know, it was just sounded pretty, you know. And that was the other thing he told me when I was playing him that Bach piece or whatever, and he told me to stop. He's like, you're never going to sound good because you're never going to be able to play in tune, and you're never going to be able to make a real sound with the bow. Like, both things are incorrect, you know. Oh. And he re-showed me this whole thing about using the weight and, you know, just better hand position, but mostly with this, like just getting a better thing with the bow. And it took me a really long time. Like, I felt like I was starting from scratch. I was actually really discouraged for a long time. And actually, oh, it's so frustrating. And I'd never felt like I could play in tune. He never let me leave page 1 of the Samantha book. It was always the C major scales. And I was like trying to, like, this is a rough period in school because I was trying to study for my juries that I didn't think I was sounding very good. And I was playing gigs 10 nights a week, and I was failing half of my classes because I couldn't make it into the harmony class at 7 a.m. And, you know, I had this amazing advisor who I went to talk to, and he said, I said, yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm not cutting it. You know, he's like, well, you have to make a decision. You got to stop playing all these gigs, or you got to quit school. You should do one or the other. And he says, what are the gigs like? And he's asking me to describe them. I'm like, well, you know, some of them they feel like working gigs and they're not super inspiring, but about half of them are creative, really fun things. And he goes, well, he's like, that's amazing, because less than 20% of the people that leave this school end up playing music for a living. He's like, and you're already doing it. So he actually encouraged me to drop out. He says, why don't you just do that for a while? And if it doesn't work out, you could always come back. And I was shocked, you know. It was such beautiful, unbiased advice. And it's, you know, I wasn't on scholarship or anything. I mean, I was paying full tuition. So it wasn't like they didn't need my money over there, you know, because the school's expensive. But
I heard actually a similar story, because I was thinking to do a PhD in a conservatory here in LA, because all my diplomas are from Europe, and the professor there told me, but you realize that you're already doing what all these kids are trying to do. Like, why do you want to do you want to teach? Like, I don't mind, but I'm not sure if I would like to do that. He's like, just do what you do, you know, don't worry about this.
It's beautiful.
Like, all right, makes sense, I guess.
I mean, that's not the thing you're going to hear from adults most of the time, you know, because they want to know what the options are for this as a career, and then you're like doing your career already, you know.
Yeah, those are like those moments when I try to look at the world like from normal people's perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, maybe I should get a diploma this. So,
it's easy to think that. I mean, I've had these weird moments a bunch of times over the years where I love doing this, but I would never wish it on anybody else. Like I it was so funny. I had one student that was asking me, like, I could tell he was really serious about this and he really wanted to do it. And I couldn't believe that my own instincts were like, to tell him that it was really hard, like to tell him that everything that they had told me that I swore I'd never say to anybody. I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. It's a really hard life. You gotta like give up this, because you kind of got to give up everything and do it. I know that's not for I know everybody's got the same story. I know some people seem to be good at multitasking and can, you know, easily have a family and other parts of other careers. And like, there's lots of people doing phenomenal things with their lives. I'm a really terrible multitasker, so I have to focus everything on one thing to make it even kind of work. And I'm having such a good time doing it. And yet I feel bad. I mean, I had a girlfriend that toured with me for the first 7 years we toured. And I always felt bad about it. I always felt bad that I was putting somebody else through this life with me because I got to play, and the rest of the touring is kind of hard. I don't mind it. I kind of like, finding a good coffee shop and doing all that stuff. But, for somebody that's not getting to play every night, it's kind of a hard life, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I feel bad about it, and to a degree, I felt bad about my band too. I was like, I'd book us a little tour for 6 days and we'd try to go do it. I'd feel bad because we really weren't making any money, and they all had other good jobs. Some of them, or some of them were full-time musicians and had to leave good paying gigs to go do this little funny thing we were doing. And I felt bad about it. I felt guilty, and I felt like, well, if I could tour by myself, then I don't have to worry about anybody else, and I can just have a good time and not care. And that was kind of part of it. It was a little bit of a selfish attitude, but
couple more things that I wanted to ask you, and then I would like to hear you play. Again, it's one question comes from Cloudberry again, and he's asking you, that one guy, do you have a regular upright bass at home that you use?
Yeah, I actually got 3 still. I have the K that my dad gave me. That's back at my folks' house. I left it there. When I moved to Vegas, I brought with me my Czechoslovakian flatback. That's the one I have here. It's all out of tune and everything. And then there was actually another one. There was another weird Czechoslovakian bass that was a round back one. It's actually a beautiful instrument, but it was a mess. Like I got it for $500 in the newspaper when I was living in Berkeley still. And, somebody had passed away and somebody's wife was just getting rid of it. Didn't even know what it was. It didn't look good. The finish was completely falling off of it. It looked terrible, but I looked inside of it. I could tell it was something. I couldn't tell what it was, but I knew it was something kind of nice. And there used to be a great luthier repair-y guy in the Bay Area that I used to go to, Alex Glickman. And I brought it to him and he's like, oh yeah, this is a nice instrument. I mean, it wasn't I didn't find a Stradivarius or anything, but it was nice. It was a nice little instrument. So I got 3 and 2 of them are back at my folks' house. And my dad actually has been playing the other Czechoslovakian one. He really likes that one because it's really loud. It's a really loud bass. My Czech bass here that I went to school with, the second part of school it's not very loud. It's really quiet, but it bows really good. Like it almost sounds like a cello. And it was a really great instrument for, trying to play that impossible stuff on. But yeah, I do have a bass here. I should start playing it again. I really actually talking about this stuff really is making me miss it a lot. And even like maybe what's it? No thumb. I'll duct tape it down. I didn't realize what how taboo that was. I'm just making my own rules over here. So it's so funny.
No. That's the best thing. I mean, I always think like whatever is creative and whatever is making things, happening. And then especially if you use it in your own way, and what you definitely do. So it's amazing.
Sure. But we all do. I mean, don't you think? I mean, haven't you found that everybody with this technique specifically completely has their own way of doing it?
Key players, yes, but there's majority of people that kind of get into the way that they're copying something and then think that's the only way, which is kind of the thing that I'm strongly against.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I think maybe I'm thinking of when I first started seeing other guys do it. And I just was shocked how everybody just was reinventing the wheel. It looked like to me, like everybody totally had a different thing. And I'm going, oh, I never thought about doing it that way. Like I never would have thought about doing it. I'm trying to think who else I saw early on that just blew me away. But yeah, like when I was staying, like with Hinton, I couldn't even tell what he was doing. Like his movements are so delicate, and the sound isn't. The sound is ruckus and real percussive and syncopated. And I remember
It
watching
was
them.
interesting because he was using steel strings, he was using themastics,
Mm-hmm.
and he was kind of like a lower
Lower action.
lower action, and then so he had an interesting approach. I forgot to ask you, what kind of string are you using?
I'm a Tomastic guy too. Yeah, this is
Cool.
actually for a while when I was going to school, I switched to those solo what do they call it? Dominant. I switched to the dominant ones, and I was using the solo tuning, but I was tuning it regular because it made it rubberier. And it was kind of fun. What's that?
Lots of people use that. And if I play a psychobilly gig, I would usually do that.
I think I had gotten that idea from someone else. They told me a jazz player in the Bay had told me to do that, and I tried it. And I really liked it, but then I started finding that when I went back to the regular Spiracores, it was just gnarlier. I was kind of digging it more, and especially for not slappy stuff, for just real big sustainy pizzicato-y kind of jazzy stuff that I was getting into. I liked it, which is kind of funny because if it was now, I probably wouldn't do it that way. Because in my mind, I think for the upright, it's more of a natural tone, like more of like the gut thing. Like I didn't realize the gut thing was like makes such a huge difference because those steel strings, they smack so hard against the fingerboard. It's
interesting you mentioned that Themastic makes they tried like to do new strings that they were for people that are allergic to nickel. That's how I remember they were telling me. And then they gave me a set and they said like, hey, this might work for you because you're doing lots of slap, and then you might, with Spiracores, especially if they knew you get like lots of that metally sound. And it was like, yeah, I'll try them. And then those are the strings that I've mostly been using, but they ran out of that material or something. I went on a meeting with them last year, year before in Vienna, and then because they've been making those strings for me like a couple sets a year.
Wow.
And I really like them, and they're kind of like a goldish color, so it really works well with my bass. And then I try like to convince them, okay, why don't you just make these widely available? And they were like, it's really hard to get this material and this and this. So anyway, but
what are they called?
Those are the ones that I use, and they work like well for me.
What are they called? What are the model, or what are they called?
I don't think they had a model because they just created a prototype and they gave me
Whoa.
that. And then I think I was the only one that liked it. So
right.
they're just making those strings for me, but they're never made them publicly available. But it's but they're good strings. So
wow, that's amazing.
One thing I wanted to ask you about. How do you travel if you have to fly? If you have to tour in Europe or Japan or South America, wherever. How do you travel with Magic Pipe?
It's a challenge, and I'm sure as a lot of us do. I have a million stories airplane stories. Like when I was flying with my upright, I had there was a guy from the symphony that sold me a flight case, like a nice, molded, whatever you call it, just a big fiberglass flight case for my upright. And, it was so interesting because that thing had to weigh 200-ish pounds. Like it was so heavy in that thing. And the rules are so strict now. Like when I first finished the first version of this, the stainless steel, the galvanized steel plumbing pipe version, that thing weighed about 120 pounds in the case. And I had a case custom made for it, and I would fly with it all the time. And I had it down to a science. Like I could fit all my hardware into these giant suitcase things, and then I had this giant case with this thing. And they would always take it. I'd have to do a little smooth talking here and there. And then I remember when I used to go to Australia a lot. I started going there like every single year for a good 5 years straight. And they were so strict over there. Like everything's got to be 35 kilos, 34 kilos, or whatever that is. That's around 70 pounds here, like to the kilo, And if you're over it, which I was, they'd have to call the dude up from the runway, from the ground crew. Guy had to come up like the supervisor dude and clear it and say, oh yeah, we're cool, because it's like a union rule over there. They can't screw around. And they'd always say yes. They never gave me a hard time. But then over here, it used to be 100 pounds, nothing over 100 pounds. Now it's nothing over 70 pounds. And luckily, this new version is 60. In its case, it's like 60, 67 or 63 pounds. It's just perfect. And then everything else goes into those Samsonites. So at this point, I have everything in 3 pieces. I carry on my computers in the brain with the whole rig. I fly the big case for this, 2 other cases. With Delta, I got so many miles with them that in any affiliate with them, with Sky Miles, I got so many miles on the statusy thing, the platinum thing. So they let me have at no charge 3 pieces at 70 pounds a piece, which is amazing. And they never sweat me on it. Even if I don't get the upgrade or whatever, they still just take it. If it's any other airline and they bring out the calculator, I'm screwed. But I'm pretty good at it. I'm actually really getting good at it. I can fit the stuff into a pretty big taxi if I need to. It's a little cramped. I got to do this amazing tour 2 summers ago in Europe. I haven't been over to Europe a lot, but I got to do this amazing tour in Europe with the Eels, and it was a big tour. I was opening the show, and that was the first time I've been in the situation where they just took my gear. I was taking trains and planes everywhere just by myself. It was so easy. And actually, my folks were over there for a little while, and we were traveling together, and I didn't even have to worry about my gear. And I don't know if they wouldn't have taken my gear. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have gotten around, because it's a big place. Europe's a big place. But yeah, it's not so bad, but it's definitely not a guitar and a case on your back. And even in my upright bass days, I had that down to a science. I had a Reunion Blues bag with the backpack straps. I had this really cool little SWR amp I used to use with a little dolly, and I could park anywhere in San Francisco. I could walk up and down hills. I was so easy in and out of gigs with that setup. It was such a no-brainer, even though the bass is a big old instrument. But it's so funny to think now. It seems like it's so much harder. I don't know how I would travel with an upright. It seems like that would be way harder. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
I mean, do you have a hard case?
I do not own a hard case, but few times that I had to travel with my own bass to Europe, I would get a hard case.
Okay. Somehow. You have to. I mean, there's no other way, right? To fly with it, unless you're going to borrow an instrument or do.
That happens a lot, And then this company that makes the basses for me, they're now based in London. So it's easier to get a bass over there. So
nice.
Yeah, I make it happen. You know what? We've been talking for 3.5 hours. I want to hear you play, and is there anything that we haven't, any subject that you wanted to talk about and then we haven't, touched?
I think we got a lot. I was so glad we talked about the jazz stuff, because that's such a big part of my life. It's really nice to get to talk about that with somebody. I really appreciate it, because I think about it a lot, but it's such a different part of my life, but it's like so important. And like, it's funny about, and this happened with school too. Like I was saying with the Boeing, how I've struggled with it. And I tried so hard for my juries. I passed my juries, dropped out of school, just started playing jazz, like just 3 gigs a day, just doing that thing for a couple of years. And then picking up the bow a few years later, and suddenly I could do it. Like it was just there. Like suddenly I could get a good sound, and I was playing in tune. I was like, wow, it's almost like, your subconscious catches up with your desires to play to play well. And then the same thing happened with like jazz. Like I was playing so much jazz, and I started not hearing it anymore. Like I was playing it too much, and I was just kind of this thing that I was doing every day. And once I stopped doing that, I started loving it again. Like just falling in love with the music and like listening to Miles again and Coltrane and everything. And then like Chick Corea, just passed away last week. And I was shocked, just because he always seemed like an old guy. I mean, he always looked great, but when I was a kid, he seemed like the old guy because he was always bringing up the young guy. Like he was just this eternal mystic elder of our jazz tribe, and he just seemed like he was always going to be there, just always going to be there. And like I thought about him last year, even he always would come into my mind, and I would always poke around online and see what he was up to. And he'd always have a new band, a new group, a new crop of young, amazing musicians that were just like had individually reinvented all their instruments. And you know what was interesting too, John Patitucci, like I was saying, like that was when I saw him play that first time, that was the first time I remember thinking, wow, I don't understand what he's doing. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to play like that. Like it was the first time, because like, when you're like a teenager, especially, you're real competitive, and you see a bass player, and you're like, I could do that. That was always my thought. You go see your favorite band, and they're amazing, but you're like, I could probably do that. I could play that bass line. That's not that hard, like even though there's more to it than just playing the bass line. Obviously, there's a million things going on that you're not even ready to comprehend at that age. But the first time I saw Patitucci, I remember going, oh wow, like there's a whole language that he's speaking that I don't get. Like, and I'd listen to him being interviewed, and he would talk about, Coltrane. He's like, I just want to sound like a tenor. And I'd be like, what? But you're a bass. What are you talking about? What does that mean? Like, I didn't know what that meant, but he was talking about, I mean, I know now what it means. He's talking about the harmony and sort of the tonality. And I just didn't get that when I was a kid, because I just wanted to see people go, but like, I got so into it later. And I stopped checking it. I stopped seeing, he wasn't like, that show wouldn't come around as much. And I didn't see that show anymore. And I was playing pretty much every night. I wasn't going to shows. And I was in New York City 2 summers ago, and I got to see him play. He was doing a solo concert in a little art gallery. He put out a solo record, and he was playing by himself with no amplification in a little art gallery. Everybody was sitting around. It was so unbelievable that he was even doing that. And I went, and it was like this sweet lady that was running the art gallery. And she's like, oh yeah, we're having a concert tonight, and it was $20 and you had to buy the ticket then. And I sat right in the front and sat there and watched him. And it was like, he sounded just as amazing. Like it was just as mind blowing as when I saw him when I was a teenager, but I felt like I got it though. Finally I was like, oh, I see what he's doing. Like this actually makes sense to me. Like, and it was such a beautiful full circle thing for my head, just for my head. It wasn't that I'm as good as him, because I'm not, and I never was, but I was like, it was just a nice thing to know that at least I understand it. I'm like, I get what he's doing.
That's a good feeling. And
he
is amazing, and
he's so good.
It's definitely something special. And I'm glad you mentioned that acoustic band, because I always loved that record.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good. When I was a kid, I never really was not getting the electric record. I was like, this is not my thing. And then, but I heard the acoustic one. I was like, oh, this is unbelievable.
It's deep. It's I saw the electric band first, and I kind of the same way. I knew I was supposed to like it, and I could tell they were doing things that were way up here, and I was just kind of barely hanging on, mentally with what they were doing. And I still liked it, and I could recognize that this is something special. But then when I saw the acoustic band, it was like a punk rock show, like it actually felt like I was watching, like it was the first time I went to a punk show. Like that's what it felt like. It was so aggressive and like
that's
intense.
How I felt. That's how I
it's
felt.
So good. I just was like, I was so thankful. And actually I did on my own broadcast, I did a little Chick Corea remembering episode the day he passed away. I literally found out minutes before I was going to do my thing. I was just kind of in shock. And I found some acoustic band stuff, and I was watching it as I was doing my broadcast. I was kind of showing everybody a little bit. And it was like even crazier sounding now. Like they were doing On Green Dolphin Street, because they were just doing standards back then, but just really fast, aggressive tempos, and the whole beginning of it, Chick's inside the piano and he's doing all this percussive stuff, and they're just all just feeling it, and it's so much energy, and I never got that energy from the electric band, and Dave Weckl just ripping, and I just didn't know that jazz could like rip. That's what it felt like. Like I knew all the other jazz. I mean, I was going to see everybody. I was going to see Gary Peacock, and I'd see Ray Brown every time, and Ray Brown is just like the godfather of everything. I mean, of tone, of swing, of like that was what bass is supposed to be. Absolutely. But this was like totally different, and even just the way he would. So smooth, and in the upper register, he was just playing melody stuff, like it was a 6-string electric bass. And I was like, I have no idea how that's possible. Like that doesn't seem possible on this instrument, I just took, and he just did it. And I remember wondering why do they do anything else besides this? Because this is the greatest music.
That's how I felt.
But you know what I saw? And this is not that long ago. I saw Chick Corea. Me and my dad went to see a show, and it was Chick Corea, Bobby McFerrin, and Jack DeJohnette.
Oh wow!
Playing in this theater, and I had looked it up on YouTube, and they were doing Spain, and they were doing the classic tunes. And I was going, I guess that'll be cool, And we got there, and they didn't play any songs; they just played music. They just improvised, and it was so bizarre and incredible. Like it was so much better than anything I could have hoped to see from them. Like at this stage in their game, like they're totally disinterested in like doing anything that's less than having a blast, And I was so excited because the concert started and all three of them were inside the piano, like just doing stuff. And Jack DeJohnette has a melodica with one hand, and he's banging on the strings in the piano with the other hand, and they branched off from that into just improvised for 2 hours in front of a theater of people of uppity Santa Barbara, yuppity Santa Barbara people, that I thought would want to see, the fancy music, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like fancy folk. and everybody loved it. Everybody was freaking out. We were all standing up, standing ovation. It was beautiful. Just beautiful.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have one more for us?
Yeah, I can play you another one. Yeah, I can do another.
Let's do it.
Let me think. Yeah, let's try this one. This is just a improv jam with a new sound I've been working.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
I love it. I have one more question for you, and I'll
Please.
let you go prepare like to your show. And I would like to remind all our viewers that one guy, this guy here, he has a podcast 3 times a week, and it's Thursday, Saturday, and Monday at 5 p.m. And you should just go to his YouTube or Facebook or wherever you want to go. But it's youtube.com/that one guy. One is a number, and you're going to be able to hear him play the magic pipe even more just in a couple hours. All right. So, my last question, and I love asking this one to all my guests, is what inspires you to still do what you do after all these years?
No other marketable skills for sure. But no, all kidding aside, it's always a search for sure. I mean, I love the idea that you're only, a guitar player that was a lot older than me when I was just coming up said this to me. He goes, "You're only as good as your next gig." And I love that. And he actually, that was something he would say he lived by, because, they used to say, "You're only as good as your last gig," and he hated the idea of going through life that way, just like kind of like riding on the heels of what you just did versus what you're working on. It's like, no, it's not about what you just did. It's about what you're doing right now and what you're going to do, what you want to do, and what you want to do informs what you're doing. It's like keeps you grounded and in the moment, and like let's like think about, yeah, this is happening, this isn't happening, I wish this was happening, or I wish this wasn't happening, or I wish this was happening more. There's always that, especially with music. We always want it to be easier than it is, but it's just about, I think the challenge is kind of the best part. Like, let's just see how we can make a career out of this. I think making a career out of music is like, that's almost the most creative part of any of this. It's like you kind of got to find your own way to play, and you got to find your own way to make a living, kind of like find your niche, and that's a beautiful, righteous pursuit. I think it's a fun journey for sure.
I love that. Search and the journey. Thanks a lot for being a part of the Slapstream. 37th episode. Can you imagine?
It's beautiful, man.
Show on the upright with no electric, no frets.
Nope, no thumb.
37 episodes so far.
You should make a t-shirt that says "No thumbs, no." What were the other two things? No frets, no thumbs, no dice.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I can't wait to see you play somewhere down the road. Can't wait to see your name at the same festivals that I play. Hopefully,
likewise, my friend.
Time it's going to be the same day.
For sure.
And good luck with your music and everything. And
thank you.
See you somewhere down the road.
My friend, absolutely.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. This was 37th episode of the Slapstream. And I know that lots of you that are watching this have been with me and with us, with our slap bass since the very beginning. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for all the support. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out the Patreon. Patreon link is in the description of the video. If you'd like to donate, Venmo and PayPal. Before you stop watching this, make sure to follow that one guy. His links are in the description of the video. If you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please do that. This is my whole YouTube spiel, becoming a YouTuber. But it really helps spreading the word, and that's the whole point of this. I want to make sure that everyone knows about all these great musicians and our great technique. So hit that subscribe button and like button. Let me know who would you like me to feature in the comments of the video. And huge thanks again to our Patreons, to Nikki Lugosi for doing the design for this episode. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth and keep it in the groove. I'm Djordje, and I will see you next Saturday.